telling
All right, Hal, we're on in 1 minute.
It's my way or the highway. So anybody wants to walk, do it now. We've got entirely too many troublemakers here.
Hey, are you off the mic right now? Is that why you're kind of a little roomy and quiet? All right, the music sounds good. Ten seconds.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Live exclusively for WCPT in Chicago, standing up and speaking out, here's Hal Sparks.
Beg your pardon. The choice to put Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court was not made this week or a month ago or even, quite frankly, a year ago when Ruth Bader Ginsburg's cancer seemed to elevate and they were looking to fill that seat. The seat that Amy Coney Barrett is in a position to take over, the decision to allow her to sit in that seat was made on election night 2016 by the people who voted for Donald Trump and the people who did not vote or voted for an alternative to Hillary Clinton. This fight about RBG's seat is one that was actually fought years ago. And let that be a constant reminder to us that when it comes to legislation, when it comes to judicial appointments, when it comes to the rights of your fellow human beings, the fights that seem crucial right this minute, that are boiling over and are inflamed or are looking like they are, there will be a crucial loss on the battlefield of ideas, as it were, are not the fight of today. They are the fight of years ago. And what that should teach everyone is that the next Amy Coney Barrett that gets on the Supreme Court is being lined up in preparation for Donald Trump getting another 4 years or the next Republican who is president. This fight was fought years ago. It does not mean it's over. There are obviously legislative actions that some Democrats can take to try and slow the roll, or there may be votes of conscience. All that stuff, though, is absolutely out of the hands of voters at this point. If you give a road raging drunk the keys to the car you're sitting in the back seat of, you are responsible for what happens, not they. And this is and should be a motivator more than anything else to vote and to make sure your vote is counted. If you are voting by mail and you have a plan to vote by mail, my message to you is do it as soon as you can so that any delays put forth by DeJoy will not affect your ballot. If you can drop it off at an election polling place or an actual physical location, do so. That message has to spread far and wide, because this election is not about Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat on the Supreme Court. That was the last election. This one is about every other seat on the Supreme Court going forward, and an ongoing lesson that you do not shrug off the importance of voting or participation or activity in a voting cycle, and you do not allow, purity tests or abstract thoughts about the way things should be interfere with your daily progress towards actual tangible goals that aid your fellow human beings. I'm sorry to tell you this. I'm sorry to have to say this to you, and many of you have heard me say this before, or something similar. But you need to know this. The fight that's going on in this election cycle is not about RBG's seat. That was the last one. What the lesson of someone like Amy Coney Barrett ending up taking RBG's seat is, you don't allow that to happen. You work and strive every single time. And if anybody tells you that there's no, I don't know what the difference. I don't know what the difference is really in between the parties. They're two legs in the same pair of pants. I'm really not motivated to, because that person that's running, even though I'm for their entire platform, it's a lot to ask. That person who speaks like that, who thinks like that, who votes flippantly like that, that's the person that is putting Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court, not Donald Trump, not Mitch McConnell, not Ted Cruz, not Tom Cotton, not William Barr. In a democracy, it is always on us. And not playing seriously when it deals with these things, and then being shocked when it looks like there's every possibility that this woman could be put on the Supreme Court and judge the Affordable Care Act, kicking 24 million Americans off their insurance in the middle of a pandemic, while the president issues executive orders that are effectively memos about what would be nice, what most people like would happen to healthcare, but that legally have no impact whatsoever and will not benefit anyone. This is the lesson of democracy. And this is why, the Russians and to some lesser degree the Chinese and the North Koreans attack it worldwide on social media, pitting sides against each other, watering down the vote, making people feel disenfranchised or demoralized. That's the goal. To stop or slow participation to the point where you starve the beast in their estimation. Other than that, I have no opinion. Welcome to the show. It's the HalSparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. We're on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk, AM 820. WCPT820.com is, of course, the website. Tonight, it's Sexy Liberal 4, Sexy Liberal Comedy Virtual Tour. We are doing our 4th show tonight. Very excited about these pieces. I had a rather exhausting week. Yesterday was my birthday, and I had to get all my stuff done before then, and it was a lot. But if the other pieces from the other folks are any indication and the work I put in are any indications, it's going to be a great show. So get your tickets for tonight at sexyliberal.com. Get them now. It's good for what ails you. It's laughter is incredibly important at times like these. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. During this break, I want you to think about what your plan is for voting and let me know. 773-763-9278. Hi, folks. Good morning. Hello, chat room. Hiya. How you doing? Oh, thank you, Ninka Crinkles. Thanks, Annette. Thank you, the moms. It is it was a good birthday. It was lovely. It was very sweet. I got my mail-in ballot 3 days ago, filled it out and turned it into the county clerk yesterday morning. That's how you do it. Let's see. Do you think any Republican senators will vote against this choice? Yes, I do think there's a possibility. Oh, thank you, Susie. Yes, Periscope is back up. I fixed it. Only had to sign out and re-sign in 4 times. Head is well, I guess. Yes, head is doing very well. Oh yeah, we gotta hold on. So let me grab this thing. Yeah, effectively what they were trying to do is find a white, evangelical, sympathetic woman who's young and will stay on the court for a very long time to effectively be the female Clarence Thomas in a lot of ways. Basically rule however Scalia would have ruled.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
That is absolutely true. Welcome back. So it is official, I guess. The president's pick was leaked Friday night. Before he's planning his announcement this morning or this early this afternoon East Coast time, and then he has a rally tonight where I'm sure he will say something embarrassing about his own pick and sweat and flail and drone on and manically insist that without him America will die. He is counting on this to invigorate evangelicals and the like to support his campaign, thinking that the right to life issue on their side is the primary voting driver on that side of the political spectrum, and that by putting a hyper-religious conservative on the Supreme Court, that in and of itself will answer why they voted for him in the first place and why they should again. There's obviously a caveat to that, and there is no guarantee that all the senators, that Republican senators will vote for her, vote for confirmation. It's entirely possible that someone John McCain's this thing at the last minute. It may be a a roundabout by Mitt Romney or something like that. But it is the very fact that we have to even imagine or count on a moment like that happen that shows the failings of the long-term strategies that a lot of voters and citizens have about the state of their country and how much they take it for granted. When every time someone talks about Roe v. Wade as, well, we understand that to be settled law, that means there's wiggle room. That means it only stays functional and sound as a protection as long as the people shepherding the laws through and the people who are, legislating around it act as if in good faith. It's like the Hyde Amendment. The Hyde Amendment was originally there because to placate pro-life and right to life people who, you have to say those things kind of in air quotes because they've been plenty pro-war, and I have a hard time believing that when they were, talking about, nuking Baghdad and turning it to glass, that the assumption that there weren't any pregnant women in that city at the time kind of makes the argument fall apart as far as pro-life and right to life, as it were. And most of them are pro-death penalty as well. But that being said, certainly there are evangelicals and groups of those folks that will be invigorated by him putting a pro-life conservative that has promised to upend Roe v. Wade. There has been that will certainly work for them. The other issue, though, that she and other conservatives like her have is that they are not single issue judges and have been talking about pretty much anything anti-Obama or pro-Trump to get on the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society's lists. They have to operate as an arm of the Trump campaign on a political level. They are effectively acting as sort of private legal voices for the Trump agenda, which means they haven't just been talking about pro-life stuff and then being, solidly, anti-crime and kind of normal on everything else. One of the biggest things that Amy Coney Barrett is against is, of course, the Affordable Care Act. And there is a decision before the court that will scuttle the Affordable Care Act, eliminating the protection of citizens with pre-existing conditions, removing, reinstalling, I guess, the lifetime caps on insurance for people. So, young people born with genetic disorders and the like that their parents have to care for will use up all their potential insurance at some point and will never be able to get another policy. So because of their pre-existing condition, people who have had COVID and have the secondary, long haul illnesses that go with it, lung damage, kidney damage, anything, artery related that came from it. That's a new pre-existing condition that just came into the world this year and will count as a pre-existing condition when you try to get insurance in the future as COVID spreads through, and the ancillary effects of it for everyone are not equal or known. That will count against your ability to get insurance if you have had it and survived it. So being against the Affordable Care Act is one of her also primary drivers. And the fact that this case is coming up is part of why this scramble to produce this phony baloney, series of executive orders which have no legal impact. In one case, only starting a commission, which is something that, to study why. Why is it that Canada and Germany get all their drugs at a cheaper rate? Well, because they have national health services that buy in bulk. You don't need a commission to know that. And the very belief that the idea that the people that are on this commission wouldn't know this, or that they have to look very far to figure this out, is absurd. So, and what will the answer then be of this commission? The answer to this commission will be, without a single payer system functioning in the United States that would cover enough people, we can only do that through Medicare and Medicaid. Everyone else is on their own. It would not bring down drug prices, and it would not provide these drug rebates or percentage cuts to anybody but those who are covered by Medicare and Medicaid, which a good portion of it already does. So what Trump's own commission will come back as is unless we want to become Canada or Germany or Finland or any of the Scandinavian countries or the UK in terms of healthcare, we can't get those bulk discounts. That is the reason. That's what the commission will find out. And who are the ones blocking that very thing? Well, since Joe Biden is running on the idea that we should have a single payer option for everyone in the country, and that people 125% above the poverty line should be able to be rolled into Medicare and into Medicaid automatically, or be available for a low cost version of the single payer system that they want to put in, it certainly isn't the Democrats. It is the Republicans. Many of the things that Donald Trump is suggesting in his executive orders are things that the Republicans have fought when they were originally proposed in the ACA, continue to fight every time they come forward. So if the president himself went down to the Congress with a negotiating team and said, we're going to negotiate my health care plan, and included in it were all the things that were in his executive orders that he recently put out, it would be the Republicans themselves that scuttled it. They would say no to all these things. So why even present it? Why even pretend? Well, for political reasons. Why? Because your next Supreme Court justice that you're going to put on there is going to scuttle the Affordable Care Act, and you have to pretend like you cared or you're trying to fix it, at least until after the election. Because quite frankly, this decision will be made after the election, when it will be effectively too late for the voter to realize that they had voted for a person who allowed this person in, who scuttled their insurance, and not only maybe took away their insurance, but let's say you keep your insurance. The cost of your medical care is going to go up because part of the biggest drag financially on the American healthcare system was uninsured people who consumed enormous amounts of healthcare and could not afford it and had to declare bankruptcy. And that cost gets passed on to every other consumer. So the solutions, the hard work of the things that the ACA sought to deliver were fought years ago, as was the battle to get someone like Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court so that she could lean right and scuttle the whole thing. And the fight to stop the future atrocities and destructions legislatively, the fight to, the egregious lengths to which Trump will go in a second term, or any Republican senator who sided with him during this time would do once they become president, presenting themselves as a kinder, gentler version of this, is, it will be shocking, even as we do not believe we can't be shocked anymore. But the battle to stop that, in terms of voting, actively shutting these folks down, removing them from office, and through a show of force in a mandate, a tidal wave of votes, is the only thing that will convince them that this is not tenable behavior for the other ones that are on the edge, and that will remove those that have been facilitating this entire time. This is no time to be exhausted. This is no time to feel overwhelmed by this. This is a time to recognize that you are protecting. This is one of those situations where, as a voter, it's always like this, but there's a clear contrast, a clear, things are in stark relief. You can recognize that the vote you will cast this fall is the equivalent of planting the tree you will never be able to enjoy the shade of. That as a citizen, as a human being, you have a choice to reinforce democracy by voting, frankly, for Joe Biden against Donald Trump, whatever gets you to the polls. To recognize that this isn't a shrug election. There is no lack of inspiration in this situation. And if you need to be inspired, I suggest you go rewatch all the stories of people pre-ACA or the people who got insurance under the Affordable Care Act, how they're still alive now because they got that coverage. Those people being alive. We'll be back right after this. It's the HalSparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, and WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. We're also the HalSparks Radio podcast, Mega Worldwide, on sexyliberal.com. While you're there, get a ticket for the Sexy Liberal show tonight. How about that? Current polling has Biden at 361 in Electoral College. I'm still voting like we're 20 points down, as you should. There could be one tremendous result from all this. If the ACA is scuttled by SCOTUS, that could force Biden to go for universal health care. It's not forcing him. Biden is going for universal health care. He's just using a single-payer system to do it. He's using a private public option to do it. Okay, Biden and Sanders were both going for, quote unquote, universal health care. Okay? They just disagree on how you make it happen and how swiftly you make it happen and the best form in which that coverage comes. Neither one of them is against people getting health care. It was a strategy disagreement. Patreons, we got 367. We're looking for 500. I'll mention that at the show. I got to do that. Trump called RBG's granddaughter a liar about RBG's final wish. Yeah, he's a scumbag. We know this. Who am I talking? I'm talking to the chat room? Yeah. Trump will announce Barrett after he plays golf, no doubt. Welcome to the second half. Yeah, that's what I called it, Cicero. Second half of my first century on this planet. Big Patreon. I tried Patreon as a gift, but
all right, coming back.
Thanks. Sure, Jeannie. I will do that.
Now let's get back with HalSparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I insist. So, in the chat room, a couple of people brought up how what their plan for voting is, and the primary one I see a lot of, which is very reassuring, is that people are they got their mail-in ballots, and they are going to fill them out and drop them off at the county clerk's office or at a drop-off point that their state has provided. This is not difficult in a first world country. Our postal system and the underlying electoral system can handle all these ballots. The illusion that Donald Trump, can you imagine? Okay, so one of the things that Donald Trump likes to say repeatedly is that the cupboards were bare. Remember this? The cupboards were bare. He came in and the cupboards were bare. Talking about the national stockpile that had ventilators and certain drugs. The cupboards were bare, according to Donald Trump. Now, first and foremost, they absolutely were not. We had somewhere in the order of 6 million tons of drugs and PPE and ventilators and replacement hoses and all this extra stuff just in case. The stockpile gets replenished all the time. What is shocking is that Donald Trump would say when he came in, the cupboards were bare, and now he's bragging about putting ventilators in the stockpile now, in the middle of a pandemic. Just let the ones there rot and then replace them at the last second because you're not planning ahead. So the brag by Donald Trump that the cupboards were bare when he came in, and him making that brag, or that complaint 3.5 years into his presidency, says to you and to all Trump voters, it would seem, that this man left the cupboards bare for 3.5 years and only deals with things by throwing money at them, your money, taxpayer money, at them at the last minute instead of planning ahead. This is how he operates. This is how he's run his company his entire time. And if it doesn't work, if Puerto Rico doesn't like him and he doesn't feel like paying for the damage done by Hurricane Maria, then he'll just sell off Puerto Rico like the Taj Mahal in Atlantic City. He'll collapse it like a casino. He'll declare sections of the country bankrupt. We wouldn't have all these debts if we didn't count New York, his home city. You don't count the dead in his home city, then what dead are there? I mean, it's basically nobody. So the fact that the president brags about this whole, the cupboards were bare, and he left them that way for 3.5 years, also should be fairly stark when he talks about how the United States of America and its mail system and its electoral system cannot handle carrying out an election by mail in a pandemic, when he's in charge of the damn thing. How is this a brag? This is something you can get away with saying when you're a Fox News host or a Fox News pundit, and you can say you can crap talk the United States and its capacity under a president you don't like. But as the president who's in charge of all this stuff, if the United States of America cannot conduct an election in almost any circumstances with the wealth that is available to us, then there is no other answer than an extraordinary weakness of leadership. Every time Donald Trump says mail-in ballots can't be trusted, they're just going to be forged, somebody can stuff, which they can't, but they're going to stuff all these ballots, they're throwing them out, you can't trust any of the system. He's in charge of that system. And he didn't just become president. He's been in there for years. They lost the midterm in a lot of ways. And he didn't complain about this part of it then and go after shoring up our electoral system because he was convinced of fraud. Only when it comes to him does he suddenly care about this. But then only when he's losing by 7 to 10 points. And what money is going to be spent both, having to fix the problems that DeJoy created on purpose, and also what people are going to be paid by the federal government to go down and intimidate voters and mess with the systems themselves. Your tax dollars will also pay for that. Of course he doesn't care where the cash is coming from or where it's going. It's absurd. But the striking thing that keeps coming back is that this president is responsible for all the things that are failing, and has been for years, and still acts as though it's still running as an outsider instead of an incumbent. The fact that this president has to still run as an outside the beltway non-politician shows more of the abject failure of him as a leader in this than anything. If the United States can't handle an election during a pandemic where a vast majority of people need to mail in their ballots because of fear of a contagion that may, while it might not hurt them personally, it may cause them to carry a disease to someone else that it may kill, and they don't want to be responsible for the deaths of their grandparents or their friends or the 0.1% of children who die of this. They don't want it to be their fault. They want to take every precaution they can. The fact that the United States supposedly can't handle this, which of course we can, but the idea that he puts forward that we can't handle this is his failure. It's his fault. So, story out of Pennsylvania that Bill Barr brings this story to Donald Trump about some ballots that were thrown out. 9 ballots that were thrown in the garbage. And they were all Trump voters. And the 9 Trump votes get thrown out. And this is an indication of the massive fraud, the election shifting fraud that will be going on. This story, he mentions it in multiple rallies, in multiple interviews, Fox and Friends, on Sean Hannity's show. These 9 votes are indicative of nationwide a trend of fraud. Then we find out of those 9, 7 were Trump votes, the 2 others weren't. And why were they thrown out? When we find out why they were they thrown out because the poll person didn't like Donald Trump, or that they are a Biden supporter, or that they're a foreign agent working to make sure that, because they work for China, that they're going to make sure that he doesn't get in because China hates him apparently, even though he gives them everything they want. No, they got thrown out because they didn't include the privacy envelope inside. They are what is called naked ballots. Naked ballots are the ballots people put in their envelope, but they don't put the privacy envelope inside of it so that you can't see who voted for what through the envelope. So that you make sure that as it's traveling through the mail system, that somebody can't hold it up to the light and go, here's a Biden one, I'm going to throw that one in the garbage or drop it on the floor until it's too late. So you put that privacy one, so they all get through no matter what the postal workers' political slant is. So these did not include the privacy envelope. Now, Donald Trump has talked about suing Pennsylvania and suing Nevada and other states over mail-in ballots. And specifically, in Pennsylvania, the suit that they are filing is to insist. The Trump campaign is suing to make sure that naked ballots without their privacy envelope will not be counted. If Donald Trump wins the lawsuit they have put forward in Pennsylvania, those 9 ballots that he's talking about that were thrown out specifically, they use the word discarded because they want you to think they were thrown on the floor or found somewhere. They were denied and thrown out. That if Donald Trump wins his case in Pennsylvania, those 9 ballots would not count. The fate of those 9 ballots would be assured and not debatable. There would be no hanging chad aspect of whether or not they should be counted. If Donald Trump wins, naked ballots will not be counted in Pennsylvania. That's about 100,000 expected ballots. By the way, there is no belief that they will, that the 100,000 that get thrown out will actually benefit Trump. They just know that if they can bring the numbers down overall, it will lower the Biden mandate in the state. We got to take a break, but when we come back, I want to talk about the COVID spikes in this country. There's an alarming situation where 22 states are seeing a rise. Some of them are have gotten a lot of attention lately for a specific reason, and it's tied to why they're having a spike, but not that they're having a spike. We'll be back right after this. We talk about how much, like almost everything else, Trump's mind is stuck in the 50s. Mail-in voting. You mean in the 50 IQ points? Mm-hmm. That's right, Gonzo. I mean, if you're winning, if your internal polls are telling you that you're winning for real, you don't clamor like this. You don't attack the actual election. Mm-hmm. Okay. Gotta see what the I'm looking up a chart real quick. Mm-hmm. Find other story real quick. Why do you still look 12-teen? Drink a lot of water. I do yoga in the morning. I don't know. I haven't gotten mine, Gonzo, but it's going to mail to probably my post office box.
Back in 15 seconds.
Thank you. All right, where's my monitor thing? Because clearly speakers are going. That's why. Okay, good.
This is Doris Davenport, host of The Doris Davenport Show, all local, all the time. Now let's get back to Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So over the last week or two, the number of COVID cases in 22 different states has started to tick up again, where they had stabilized in some way. Well, this is the overall story, and there's much debate and how much testing these states are doing now, how much it compares to the actual numbers of long-term infections and the like. But the important thing overall is that the national number, as the high populous places go down and the low populous places rise in cases, the steady hum of sickness and death in the country remains stable over a period of time, without any kind of and much like gravity, unless you take action to actively bring it down, or you allow situations where it actively ticks up, the stasis will remain fairly steady. And this week, there was this, in the last 2 weeks, there's been a 22% uptick in the number of positive cases in several states. 22 separate states, 22% rise across them over the country. We're averaging 800 to 1,000 COVID deaths a day. It is down 1% in the last 2 weeks, which is within the margin of error, and I mean, sort of not enough of a tick to actually tell you from an epidemiological standpoint whether or not your strategy is having an impact. You know, if you really bend the curve, you'll see it go down because you know the activities are working. If you see it tick up really hard, you know that there are failures. The hovering is the problem, because and it has a lot to do with different standards in different places. There is a in the map of the places that are affected by it, one thing that a lot of these places have in common, besides, some areas, obviously places like Idaho, parts of Utah, where you have low population areas that are finally getting hit, and it tracks through the neighborhood quicker. There are smaller groups to test, so percentage-wise of the populace, the numbers match more population-dense areas. However, the level of people in areas like this that have comorbidities and other health concerns are also higher, and so the death rate in those areas is what keeps the number as high as it is. That said, there's a couple of places where we've seen pretty heavy spikes. Florida, Georgia, and Wisconsin being one of the biggest breakouts of it. Also, Iowa, and mainly because of its connection to Minnesota. And if you'll notice, these are a lot of the places where Donald Trump has been having these gatherings. Tulsa, Oklahoma had this big outbreak, and they, and it tracks the original one to his rally, and then of course the holiday weekend that followed. This is an ongoing concern, and as Donald Trump insists on having these mini Sturgis rallies all around the country, with total disregard for the case rate and the expansion of this, and this arguably could be called Operation Herd Immunity, or herd mentality, I suppose, if you listen to what he calls it. But the spike in Wisconsin, because Trump had been to Wisconsin several times, he's very concerned about losing that state this time, and with good reason. That essentially by going back there, having these giant gatherings, and then having those people spread out, and a lot of those people that are coming to the Wisconsin rallies, the Minnesota rallies, and the like, the areas where Trump is, they're afraid he's not doing well, and therefore he needs to have a rally there. A good portion of the people who are coming to his rallies are like deadheaders. They follow him around. They come from outlying states. They drive in to his Minnesota rally from North Dakota and South Dakota. And then you look at North Dakota and South Dakota, and these little towns have these enormous spikes in disease over the following 2 weeks. Wisconsin, the area around where the rallies are held, there's a spike in cases, but there's also spikes in the outlying edges of the state where the people who, the rando Trump supporters live and drove in for this thing, where they could pick it up and bring it back out. This is an incredibly concerning thing just for the health of the populace going forward in the fall. And it's particularly striking that Trump has had this idea that there needs to be that he mocks Biden for wearing a mask and having social distancing and making sure that people are, wash their hands and keep separate and all this stuff unless they can be tested. That actively mocking this is contributing to the spread of the disease. The reality is that Donald Trump has been running on the idea of herd immunity from the very beginning. there were many right in the beginning of April and May at the lockdown. In Trump's gatherings in front of, where they'd have these task force briefings, which are really just weird venting psychological sessions for the president to suggest, people getting, rectal light bulb treatments to, turn people into a lamp to cure COVID inside them because light makes it go away. That in the process of doing this, what he said was there was some people were saying, well, what happens if you just let it ride? What happens if you just let it ride? That was, who said that? And every time he would bring this up, he would say it in front of Fauci and Birx, and they would go, they would obviously push back against it. And he'd go, somebody said, what if you let it ride? But we decided we've got to have a lockdown and do all these other things because it's a better plan. And if we hadn't done what we did, more people would have died. This is Trump's weird turn on this. And of course, we find out through his own admission who was the person that said, why don't we just let it ride in his cabinet? Him. He said this. He said this to Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci. This was during his exchange with them in the weekend before he started the lockdown, where they cornered him. He's the one who brought up, why don't we just let it ride? And thankfully, at that point, he did not win that argument. He acquiesced to the scientists. We had a lockdown, and cases started to go down. It worked. We bent the curve. We started to get a hold of it. But we opened up too soon. Many states had spikes. The death rate started to go up. But the president had committed to going back to his original instinct in this, which was let it ride. We're going to lose 1 million people, probably. But we can they were sick or old to begin with, and we're going to lose them anyways, and they'd probably just die of the flu, really, if you think about it. He's the one who suggested allowing it to roll through and create herd immunity. Never mind the fact that it would kill, 1 million to 4 million people. This and going forward, this is the strategy now. They're all in on this. That's why you're seeing DeSantis open up Florida. This is why, Texas and other red states are just throwing caution to the wind and blowing off safety precautions. They are just counting on the idea that they can weather the storm as far as people being hospitalized. They can handle the amount. And by the time the spike happens, where hospitals are overflowing because you've got flu deaths and COVID deaths clogging up the system, the election will be over. And this 1 million people is a natural culling of the herd. And the putting in of Amy Coney Barrett and her scuttling of the ACA and the president's view on whether or not, people wear a mask. If you feel it, do them, but you should. I have one, but I only wear it at hospitals. Well, that just means you think other people are going to get you sick. Again, a selfish act, as if he's capable of anything else, it seems. But there is one thing about the Amy Coney Barrett nomination that I find peculiar beyond all things, insofar as her being a religious conservative on the Supreme Court, and the weird internalized hypocrisy that she will be faced with once she actually makes it on the court, if indeed she does. We got to take a break for the news and a couple of sponsors, but we will be back right after this. I want to thank everybody for the birthday love. You guys, I was overwhelmed to tears. It was, in all honesty, completely frank, it was a beautiful thing, and I appreciate you guys. It was just, that's a story in and of itself. We'll be back right after this. These are all red states, except the ones that are except Wisconsin, really, where Trump needs to win. Thanks, Amy. Other than the woman that Trump is going to announce the person that The Handmaid's Tale was based on. Pretty close. The number to talk to me live is 773-763-9278. I did all my push-ups on my birthday, Gonzo, but do I just do 51 straight here? Okay, I'll do that in a bit. I need to set up a camera like on the floor here so I can cut to doing them. Otherwise, I don't know why anybody would, believe I did them. Except that you can trust me, and I'm a man of my word. Thanks, Can't Stop Lying. Yeah, that's the number, guys, in the chat room. Yeah, the herd mentality, which is what Trump and his followers have. Surprised that North Carolina isn't seeing spikes. Well, they've got lockdown issues. All the states where he's like complaining about lockdowns, Pennsylvania and North Carolina, they've managed to dodge it even though he's been there a lot. Because even though these people are gathering and having these stupid open air, rallies where they're not wearing masks and they're all packed in like sardines, even though they're having them, when they go out, they're not going to restaurants and using, and touching stuff and coughing on people. There you go. The Oh, Mark, thanks for the birthday gift. Yeah, if people do the Venmo, it sends me a notification on my watch. It's so cute. Thanks, Sweet Pea. Unless something happens to the virus's health mutation in the right direction or it miraculously disappears, forget COVID-19 dying out. It's with us. Folks must take positive public health action. Yeah, there is a positive story about about masks possibly giving people immunity over time to it because of them breathing and rebreathing smaller amounts of the viral particle and your immune system being able to fight it off.
We're back in 1 minute, and the phone lines are full.
Oh, I don't doubt it. I will do the push-ups at the end of the show. Just remind me. Herd immunity is bogus when you don't know how long the antibodies last. This is true, David. No, large gatherings will be back. If we had them after the Spanish flu, we'll have them after this.
Now let's get back with HalSparks radio program Mega Worldwide.
I would like to say for the record that all the folks who are listening to the sound of my voice, if you want, who sent birthday wishes, I appreciate it greatly. And I would like to say that if you didn't already get me a gift, one I suggest is going to vote.org and checking your voting status and making sure that you're registered properly, your address is all right there, that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and then get your plan to vote. And if you're going to do mail-in ballots and you have the opportunity to drive it to, and drop it off at the county clerk's office or at a drop-off location, you might want to think about doing that. That would be a good gift. I'm just saying, gift that keeps on giving for years and years. We have a ton of callers. Lines are full, as you do. Let's see who we have first, Evan. Sorry, is it Paul? Who's manning the phones right now? I didn't even get to check.
Oh, it's Paul. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. Hey, Paul.
I'm here.
Yeah. Who do we have first?
We are going to go to Bob from Cary.
Excellent. Hey, Bob.
Hi, Hal.
Welcome.
You had asked about voting plan, and I'm going to vote by mail. I put my application in back in July, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
But I also wanted to comment about how difficult it is to cast an informed vote. And one of the advantages of voting by mail is that you see the ballot before you get into the voting booth, so you can see exactly who's on the ballot for the different races. But in many cases, you have no idea who these people are or what their stands are on the issues. And so it's so difficult to find out why you would want to vote for or against
a
DA
or a state, or especially on the state level.
Yeah,
like
county board and
yeah, I don't know what in California we get a like a preview ballot, which it doesn't just send you like a list of who's on, but it's like a makeshift ballot that basically, like, this is what it's going to look like. This is who's on it. It's and in the case of when they have a bond issue or something like that for school boards or for school lunches or what have you, on the actual ballot, it explains. It has a pro and a con page that's provided by the primary people pushing for or against it, which is pretty great. And in a lot of places, back in the day, the Chicago Reader was an invaluable one. The LA Weekly, for a long time put out their list of people, and they were very good at helping kind of help you figure out which ones were at least on your side of the belief spectrum, and you could figure out from what, their research that they did. Of course, a lot of those papers have been bought up and scuttled by Bain Capital, and it's no accident. Keeping people uninformed is a strategy in and of itself. So, what do you like? You get yours. You get yours ahead of time. What do you do what's your research point on that? Do you just, hammer out a Google search, or?
Well, I appreciate that the website of the local paper in the area, the Northwest Herald, has a thing called Election Central. Yeah. That will list, you put in your address and it will list all the candidates in the, whatever district for the Illinois House of Representatives or such. Right. And then they do list information that each candidate. Yeah, I suppose that they're responding to surveys that they had sent them. So there are things that you can do, but man, it's hard.
Yeah. Think about if you don't have a computer. You know what I mean? That we talk a lot of times about people and their ability to research this stuff. That is something that you can take advantage of, and it's a great resource to have. But if you're a low income voter that doesn't have access to that website regularly, or if you're using whatever data you have on your phone plan or whatever weak internet you may or may not have at your home, you don't have those things available to you. That and finding the election guide insert in your newspaper is few and far between. A lot of papers don't do that personally anymore. Like I said, the Chicago Reader and the LA Weekly used to do that as part of the the election season, And I think there really has to be a resurgence of that. That's why a paper version of these kind of things is valuable, because $80 a month for internet is out of the the realm of possibility for a lot of people. But during the election season, a 25-cent paper isn't. And that was one of the big benefits. It helps to expand that. So you're absolutely right. You're just going to mail yours in as opposed to drop it off?
Yeah, I'm going to trust that I'm going to mail it in shortly after I receive it, and trust that it's going to be delivered properly.
Is there a website that you can check to see if it's been received? Some states have that. And that's a curious part. I need to start looking up all the states that do and do not have that. Because, I think the state of California, you can check, and it will say, we received your ballot, that it was in the mail. So that way, if somebody, votes on your behalf without your permission, and you check, you're like, I didn't mail in a vote. What the hell? And you can go contest it or do something.
That would be great.
Yeah. That's part of the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. It's part of the bill, so that there's a nationwide standard for federal elections. Honest to God, if Rabbit Hash, Kentucky wants to pick their mayor by which way the dog looks when he comes out of the house, I don't care. But on a federal level, or and if states want to put all kinds of comptrollers in through shenanigans to turn their little mini governments into kleptocracies, that's their problem. But on a federal election, when it's federal office, Senate and House members and the presidency, there should be a unified standard, and the highest, the gold standard, as it were, the platinum standard, as the president would call it, for the federal elections. That the standards by which they're counted and put out are rock solid. And most states, I feel like, if there was that standard, would dovetail their elections on that system and enjoy the protections and the clarity of it. So I appreciate you calling in. That means a lot, and I'm curious. Let me know if you find out if there's a similar system near you, that lets you know it's coming in. You feel free to call back in. Paul, I got enough time for one more call, I think, before we have to take a break. Who else do we have?
Let's go to Kevin from Harvard.
Excellent. Kevin from Harvard. Ew.
Hey.
Hi, Kevin.
Yeah, from Harvard. Actually, I graduated. I can tell people I graduated from Harvard, but that just means the high school.
Right.
Go Hornets.
That's nice. Go Hornets. Nice.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
go Harvard Hornets. I'm calling about mail-in voting. So we got a second call from Illinois, and so it's really easy in Illinois because they sent me if you want a mail-in ballot, you just mail it back. I mailed it back like 3 weeks ago, and I wasn't too concerned until they keep telling me to go to iwillvote.com. Well, I went to iwillvote.com, and it's really easy. It's only like 3 steps, but then it told me it didn't tell me that I was registered, but it did direct me to a correct phone call or phone number.
Right.
And I called them up. This was just yesterday, about less than 24 hours ago. It was before noon, and it only took 2 rings, and it took about 2 minutes. And she says, I got to look you up. And she took a little information, and she says, yep. She says, you're registered to vote. And we just mailed our ballots out yesterday.
Right.
So anyone from Illinois, or at least I'm in McHenry County. Mm-hmm. Okay, so northern Illinois, 70 miles from Chicago or whatever.
Yeah.
And she said, so I'd be looking for it. So I got to tell my sister that she's kind of looking for it, and I says, hey, it's coming.
Yeah.
They just mailed them.
Yeah, we are.
And so that was really...
It's reassuring. Well, I mean, we're a first world country of the highest order. We're the premier democracy on the planet. We can handle this. And anybody who tells you different is selling something.
Well, that's right. There's millions of Christmas cards that get delivered just fine.
A billion. And again...
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, a billion, that's a billion extra pieces of mail that goes out during the Christmas and holiday season. And understand, like I brought this up when the whole DeJoy thing started coming down, because he has stock in XPO Logistics, and these guys he stands to benefit financially by any time the post office is overwhelmed with a volume of mail. He
certainly does.
Yeah. So he wants to throw those machines out, not necessarily even to scuttle the ballots coming in or slow them down, although I don't doubt that that's part of his role. But that
he's looking at future profits.
Yes, that he's going to, the post office has to get these ballots through in a timely fashion. It is a lawful mandate, and anybody who works for the post office in the chain of command who slows this process or does not meet the level of quality they're supposed to do, which can be perceived as limiting somebody's ability to vote, is subject to charges. So what they're going to have to do to meet this demand and make sure of it is outsource the mailing to companies that DeJoy has stock in. That's the whole plan.
Right.
This is a grift. This is kleptocracy. This is crony, insider trading kind of stuff. But
it is. I would like to say I got one more thing to say about like the coronavirus and what's going on.
Yeah.
As I've got a good friend. His mother has a once a month gathering, and she's put that off. She's put that off for 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
But tomorrow they're going to have a gathering, and I call it, and I've never heard anyone call it this, but I call it Trump Russian roulette.
Right. Yeah.
And it just fits. Trump Russian roulette.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on out there. Why in the world would you have a family gathering?
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you want to have future family gatherings with everybody there. Because,
that's right.
You do this out of respect for your relatives, not, in spite of that respect. It's a great call. I went way over the break because it was great talking to you. We got to take a break. Thanks so much for calling in. And when you get your ballot, vote immediately, folks. Send it right in, because any of those delays that Trump talks about, the mail-in voting showing up on 10 days or 3 days after the fact, if you mail it in beforehand and it gets there in time, it's counted on election day, not after. So, and bet your bottom dollar that Biden voters are voting en masse early in the mail-in vote. The Trump voters are the ones who are going to last minute do it. His squealing is going to invert on election day. We'll be back. Used to live in New York, but my county is Republican in blue states. We had a small family gathering out of doors, lots of distancing. Still, I was worried, only like 10 people. Live within walking distance of City Hall. My ballot will be in the first week of October. Yeah. And use your privacy envelope. Absolutely. Thanks for the bits, guys. That's amazing. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. And thanks, a couple of people I've noticed on Facebook have started contributing over there, which I love. I appreciate that, guys. I'm kind of new to that side of it, but I noticed that some people either, were, I don't know what it's called, like donating through there or something. There's a little be a supporter kind of thing up there. I haven't used that much because I don't trust Facebook. And
Back in 20 seconds.
Excellent. Thank you. But thank you. How many states have decided to start counting ballots before November 3rd? They don't, Wesley. All are counted on Election Day, I think. I'm pretty sure that's the law. Unless I'm mistaken.
I'm Dick Kay from Back on the Beat, and here is the mega worldwide radio program with Hal Sparks.
Just for the record, 870,000 people filed for first-time unemployment benefits last week. That means that's on top of all the other unemployed people. That was in a week. Almost 1 million more people in a week. And that number, by the way, they talk about that number like this was expected to be lower, and it's actually higher. But you have to understand that this is a weekly number. We are adding unemployed people every week at a staggering rate, because a lot of these businesses that opened up quickly had to shut down just as quickly because of a spread, because somebody gets sick. An economist for Schmidt Futures said the 870,000 number is still above the previous height for jobless claims since before COVID crisis started. It's astonishing that we're getting used to a number every week higher than we have ever seen before. And while the labor market is showing signs of picking up, the pace at which it is improving has slowed, and some indicators even hinting at backsliding. Basically, there is an economic undertow created by the instigation of the stimulus and then the removal of the stimulus that makes it worse, because you flood the zone and then they rush people in to fill, like, oh, we're getting the stimulus money is out there, so people are being able to buy food and extra stuff, and they're having a tendency to stockpile, so they're buying in larger bulks. So there's this big rush for about 6 weeks from the end of May on till like mid-July, where there was this flood of money entering the system of people buying stuff and prepping and all that kind of stuff early on that kind of trickled in once the stimulus checks and unemployment started going in there. And then it goes away. All those people who were hired to handle quickly to handle the rise instantly lose their job again, setting them even further back, filing for unemployment. And that in and of itself can be, 2 waves of people filing unemployment. They had 2 weeks of employment and then they went back to nothing. Which is an incredible shock to the financial system, and it creates a financial undertow. That's what causes a bear market in that regard, and that's what you're seeing reflected. Let's grab another caller real quick. Who do we have, Paul?
Up next is Paul from Seattle.
Excellent. Hey, Paul. Are you there?
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Yeah,
good.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Is it still a hellscape of unimaginable horrors in Seattle? I understand that all the buildings are currently on fire and that there is no hope for the future. Is that right? Is it all white flags and flames?
Oh, indeed. We're on our second burning now.
Oh, good. All right. Yeah, I thought the first burning never ended. That was the argument that Fauci was giving, is that the first burning of Seattle never got a chance to ebb before the second burning came. But I'll take your word for it since you're from there.
Yeah,
Anyways,
right. Well,
go ahead.
We're so much like Rome,
It's
really
true. It's like Rome, but with internet. Right. Rome with coffee.
A city of libertines. Yeah, a city of liberty and microbrews. So, well, not so much anymore.
Just licking
microbrews
lead
all
paint.
moved to Oregon.
Right.
But so I want to talk about the court here.
Yeah.
Because the zealots on the Trump side, people don't really understand what's going on here with abortion and Roe versus Wade. Keep hearing about Roe versus Wade, but many more Republican appointees to the court have voted in favor of abortion than Democratic nominees. And you start with Roe. 5 Republican nominees of the 7 majority in Roe, 3 by Nixon, which was and two by Eisenhower voted in favor. On the Warren-Burger court. And then again in 1989, Roe was upheld in Webster. Sandra Day O'Connor wrote for the majority on a majority Republican court. And again in 92 in Casey, which is the real crux of the issue here, Sandra Day O'Connor, Anthony Kennedy, and David Souter wrote for the majority. Again, a majority Republican court.
Right.
Now, what the conservatives need to be careful of is that Roe is not about abortion.
No.
Abortion is abortion is the topic of Roe, but the subject under which the topic comes is
medical privacy.
Right to privacy.
That's right.
Yeah, privacy. And so this could come back. What they really want to overturn is Casey. That's what they. But
yes.
If you overturn Roe, this says that the state does not have to respect. You do not have a right as a United States citizen to privacy.
Right.
And
medical,
so
especially medical privacy.
I'll
go even further than that.
Right.
This would give, this would take away that privacy and make your medical records a commodity that people could buy and sell and release on the internet for the purposes of buying and selling insurance, primarily in the beginning. That basically the government, because you have no right to privacy about your medical history or your medical person or your conversation between your doctor, the insurance companies can seek to find out, to treat you in the future anything they want. Well, that can go to being a background check that an employer can do in the future. They want to look at your medical records to make sure that you don't have anything, so that they're not hiring you and giving you insurance that will weight the pool that they've given to their people, or that you might not be able to show up for work because you have a history of migraines. And then that information sits on the on some stockpiled internet thing that the Russians and whomever else can not only take information from, but put information into. It's a horrible slippery slope.
Other aspects of your privacy as a parent could be called into question by the state.
Right.
This is I think this in the current climate of conservatism, I think they would be the ones to be the most against overturning Roe.
Right.
But all they see is abortion,
Mm-hmm.
and they think that that's their right to. And they don't understand that again, abortion was the topic of Roe, not the subject, and they don't understand this, and so then they'll start complaining when states start poking into their privacy in other ways, and they'll say, no, you can't do that, and the court's going to have a tough time. It's a slippery slope for the court to try and write decisions narrowly enough to cover their butt and say, accomplish their particular political agenda, and write this decision narrowly enough for the cases that actually do get through. Because as I've been pointing out recently, a 6-3 court in favor of the conservative majority, they can essentially, because it takes 4 justices to opt to hear a case,
right.
the conservatives can shut out the progressive cases that would likely win in the Supreme Court. They can just shut them out by saying we don't want to hear them. And as Donald Trump has stacked the lower federal courts, those decisions will just stand where they may.
Yeah, that and that has been the goal in this. The fascinating thing is, I almost feel like a strategy on in the I don't know how to phrase it in a way that I can say it on the radio. In the making sweet love to a rat, as it were, in political speech, is if liberal and progressive groups came out with a make everyone's medical records public move, in an ironic attempt to to take down Roe v. Wade. Like, we're going to make this whole thing like eliminate medical privacy, get rid of Roe v. Wade as billboards and that stuff. People should have the freedom to see your medical records. This is America. If you were running a campaign like that, the right would flip out. But it's exactly what would happen if Roe is overturned. And you can't thread I know what you're talking about with threading the needle, but that would be a gender-specific needle thread where you'd go, women have, because of their having a uterus, do not have the same right to privacy over the full autonomy of their body that men do. And this woman may feel comfortable making that argument, but I'm curious, once she becomes a Supreme Court justice, if, when she's hearing these, women shouldn't be allowed in the workplace or get equal pay for equal work kind of ideas, when she herself, is running as a conservative who believes women should stay in the home and raise children and not work, and yet she's a judge who clerked for Scalia, who ended up on the Supreme Court. Obviously hypocrisy is not a problem for these folks, but that's something weird to wake up with, that cognitive dissonance in your head every single day.
Yeah, let me ask you, Hal, and I just want to say before that, when they assign personhood to a fetus, then I'm going to say that the woman gets to claim hostile occupation by another person. But my question for you is that my question is, do you think that the Democrats, given this is going to be rammed through, and we are looking at trying to take the Senate, the Democrats don't want any kind of blowback. Should the Democrats just sort of sit and watch it happen with maybe some gentle cross-examination of Amy Coney Island, as Stephanie likes to say,
right?
Just to make sure that everybody knows that she wants to overturn Roe. So should they just kind of let it happen? Because I think doing the Brett Kavanaugh treatment on her is only going to make it rougher for them to take back the Senate.
Well, they're hoping that the religious protection around her ideals will somehow shield her from it, because it'll be looked at as an attack on Catholicism, when in fact she's an extremist. It's the equivalent of kind of being in an Opus Dei-like group or whatever. It is not. It is in fact the sort of evangelical wing of the Catholic Church is what these folks kind of lean towards, which is why the evangelicals like her so much. They are very specific in their belief system. It is. Here's the problem, though. People walk into a situation where they treat, I think, what would effectively be a UFC fight like a boxing match. That, where these are the punches available to me, and these are the only ones that I can use. When there are a myriad ways of attacking what she's talking about, and the greatest, attack on her probably will be hypocrisy and inconsistency in her rulings and in her, her seeking, this seat in particular. And so it takes more study, they're piling through her legal papers right now like crazy. And anybody, by the way, there's a team on the Democratic side, and if that I'm sure exists, and if it doesn't, it should, is my advice, that they need to go on the Federalist Society's lists of judges that they put forward, people they want, and just dig through their stuff and sit on it for now and forever, because some of these people are still going to be, on their list in 10 years because they're only 40. And keep an eye on these folks for when they come up and a Republican leader brings them forward, and you can go through their stuff going, "Hi, I know you. You said this, and you also said this. This is why your ability to be an impartial juror and to take the Constitution as it's written is in question." We have to take a break. Paul, thanks so much for the call, brother, and an excellent point. One of the things that I don't think people discuss enough, and I was talking about it yesterday, and I knew exactly where you were headed, and that's why we spoke over each other. It's a lovely thing. Roe is about medical privacy. The question for the Republican Party is why they don't believe that people have the right to medical privacy, and who, when that is overturned, they intend to sell your medical records to. We'll be back. Mm-hmm. Will Congress publish their taxes? Why just Trump? I don't know what you mean. Look how Putin took away Russian rights. Yeah, I mean that's the goal. That's what that's the standard, right? No. Yes, Dina. We will make. I'll make a snippet of the Paul call and post it. Absolutely. Oh, the Proud Boy March or whatever. Again, you handle this by turning your backs on it, folks. Being drawn into a street fight with people who are gunning for one is, let them go home disappointed. Seriously. You're not going to get an all-out war with them for real. So don't even LARP about that BS. Antifa or people who are counter exchange boys or any of these other groups are basically on the same team as those guys, because destabilization is the goal.
Back in 30 seconds.
Thank you. Yeah. Stay away from the Proud Boys. Let them have the street for the day. They'll go away. Absolutely. I mean, look at them. They're not people who like going for a walk very often. So, thank you, Joe. My birthday was yesterday, so people are still saying happy birthday. Thank you, Gonzo. Appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much. And thanks for the birthday wishes, man. Welcome back to the show. So there's some talk right now, both in the chat and on the news, about the Proud Boys marching in Portland, and this being some sort of like front line, and it is the front line of the Ren Fair revolution, which is what I call this LARPing nonsense that's going on in the streets. No one marching with guns, with long guns in the streets of America right now, or clad in all black with weapons of their choosing. I don't know what the current flavor of the soup is.
Soup for my family.
But if you're out in the streets and you're committing arson, or you're intending to clash with lines of police, or you're there to counter protest and think that you're on the sides of the police because you're out there with long guns, or you're macho marching through the streets or whatever, you're not helping. Go home. I swear to God, all of these people are like, it's like they're walking through a gymnasium trying to convince people to stop exercising and get a lap band. Don't exercise and eat right. Do the daily work that it takes to be healthy. Just have the surgery and take a pill. That's what these folks are. They think democracy is an app, and no matter how hard they swipe right or swipe left, it doesn't seem to change for them. While the rest of us have incrementally, with regular effort and through the constant gardening of being good citizens, actually moved society forward. Gay marriage being legal, don't ask, don't tell going away, Ruth Bader Ginsburg being the first woman to lie in state in the Capitol. Understand that while it's a shame it hasn't happened before, it's a victory that it happened now. You understand? You understand how these are steps that were taken bit by bit, that it was not acts of revolution that put Ruth Bader Ginsburg's body in state in the nation's capital. It's the incremental work she did over the course of her life that added value not just to her existence on the planet, but to every other woman and man who cares about them on the planet as well. So so the answer to the to the Proud Boys and the Patriot Prayer folks, the answer to the Antifa folks is stay home. And to the Antifa folks who think that they're actually, attacking the opponents, go home. You're violent children, and you're interrupting the genuine protesting of people who actually care about the issues. The nonviolent voices of the people who are creating a genuine political movement that will have impact for centuries is being scuttled by your need to throw bottle rockets. It's embarrassing. And all these folks, from the Proud Boys to the Antifa crowd, and all they show is how much of legit society and the benefits of a democracy they take for granted themselves and have dismissed. Let's take another caller. Otherwise, I will get into a much longer rant about that, and I can feel it coming up. So, yeah.
Up next, we have Ike.
Oh, right on. Hey, Ike.
Hey, Happy New Year, birthday boy.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Hopefully those 80-year-old strippers and the midget and the little
yeah,
monkey
they were
will
all.
find
They
you
were
in
so.
time.
That was so sweet of you. You know, we had to do social distanced, version of it this year, but I appreciate you sending them, and they seemed lovely.
Well, good.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing how you can social distance with Jello and still have fun. You know.
Yeah.
But
GMI. All right.
But I've got no worries about what's going to happen at the election.
Mm-hmm.
I've got no worries for all of the steam that he's blowing. He's just desperate. This talk about the state legislatures getting involved and overturning the will of the voters in each state and picking their own electors and all this crap. That ain't going to happen. A lot of these states, that's all enshrined in their constitution. The military's already stood up pretty much in the background and said, look, he can do what he wants, but when it comes down to the Constitution or him, it's going to be the Constitution, and we'll drag him out. You ain't got to worry about that. So, and as far as his little the little guys that they got running around with their little rifles,
right?
That ain't nothing the police and some other good old boys couldn't take care of if they had to. Right. So, it ain't no big deal. Yeah. I mean, I'm a little older than you. I know a little bit more about the '60s, and I know that back in our day, the guns wasn't a thing.
Yeah,
we were chemists. That's what we were.
Right.
And you've got stuff under the sink of your at your house that can make as big a mess as any gun.
Right.
So they don't want to play with us. Trust me. Although it would be kind of fun just to get a group of them and teach them a few things.
No, we're not.
But
we don't advocate. Okay. You know me. I don't advocate for any of that stuff.
Yeah,
I'm
I know.
I'm a classic democratist.
Yeah. Let them keep playing their games. It's all for naught. It doesn't matter. I just will remind my friends out there on the West Coast, though, for these guys that like driving their little Nazi pickup trucks with their paintball guns and all that crap, and their pretty rims and pretty paint jobs, a little squirt bottle of brake fluid really screws up a nasty, makes a paint job really go to hell in a hurry.
I don't recommend that on anybody's car, right? Yeah. But yes, we are joking.
Well, if they're running people over and they're firing paintballs out the back, I got news for you. You're lucky I'm not in that. Right. Yeah, you're lucky I'm not in that group because you would have a problem.
This would be right, and this would be my argument exactly for why no one should show up to these things. That the most disappointing experience these guys can have is not going home and having killed or harmed another human being. As a matter of fact, that's their plan on the story they get to tell everybody, like they're joining a prison gang. What the most disappointing part is that they went out, had no impact, and came back home and recognized the
but Hal, the problem is they're showing up at the rallies where they don't belong.
Right.
But that's why the police are there. That's why the rest of them are out there when they're peaceably protesting and they show up with all them damn trucks. They shouldn't be there in the first place, and if they want trouble, that's what they're going to get because that's what they're looking for.
But that's the problem,
they're instigators.
What it does, I agree, they're instigators. That whole agent provocateur thing has been around forever, and that was arguably Paul Manafort's entire job when he worked in Ukraine was creating instigation on purpose so that the government itself had a reason to open fire on its own citizens. And the answer to that has to be much more hardline in the other direction. And John Lewis was a student of Gandhi in terms of political activism, and I follow that as well. And the long term, the short term impact of these kind of things is horrifying and awful. But a lot of times it does next to nothing when it in terms of long term impact on the electorate. If anything, they're minor laws about stuff that happen. Just
so you know, Just so you know, listen, I'll go along with that nonviolent thing, but like I said, if somebody shoots me in the head with a paintball, they're going to have a problem.
Well, that's
but beyond
self-defense.
that,
That's a different thing. I hear you. Go ahead.
What I'm going to do with the 11 people that I got registered, we're going to go the night before to the polling place. I've got a solar generator. I've got a TV. I got it made. We're going to sit there right in front of that front door all night, and we're going to be there in the morning when they open. And we're just going to make a party of it. I was going to go absentee, but I don't trust it to the point that if you are going to go absentee, they're already changing the law here. It's in the courts. At one point, they said you don't have to have a witness. Now the judges, another court's turned that over and said you do have to have a witness, and it's going back and forth. So I'm going to say if you're going to vote absentee, do what I was going to do. Go up to your UPS store, have your ballot and your get your ballot, have it notarized, send a copy of your driver's license notarized, and send it in all in one package. And they'll have a hell of a time challenging that.
Right.
They're also talking about challenging if there's no postmark. In other words, if you dropped it off by hand, they're talking about challenging if there's no postmark on the ballot. You can't prove when it was dropped off.
Right, but that seems if the state has drop-off boxes, then that challenge is null and void. I know that they're going to try that in some states, but if your state provides drop-off boxes, obviously if you had a box of them show up at randomly at a polling place, that would be cause for concern or at least scrutiny. But in terms of if they make available drop-off boxes for mail-in votes, then that kills that law, that legal challenge dead immediately in your state. So check and see. Most people need to just check and see if your state provides drop-off boxes. If they don't, most people I think are going to vote, who are voting by mail, are voting right away. And that's crucial.
Either way, we're going to steamroll them, man.
Yes.
It's going to be a bloodbath political.
Yes,
okay?
I agree. I think the turnout is going to be extraordinary this time, and I think even with shenanigans from their side, we're going to end up with a heightened level of impact in this that I think they're not counting on. So you're absolutely right. We got to take a break.
Yes,
Thanks,
sir.
Ike. I'm always glad to hear from you, brother. I'm glad you're all right. Cheers. We'll be back right after this. It's the HalSparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Wow, the show is just rushing by today. It's amazing. And I blame you guys and my rants. We'll be back. Four-star run on the jump cuff. Backs Joe Biden to defend the Constitution. Yeah. In Oregon, most public library drops become ballot drop-offs. That's fantastic. Last month is going to be tough. It's going to be work. Find the vigor in it, The secret to happiness in life, folks, is finding the joy in the things you cannot change. Hear me? The secret to happiness is finding the joy in the things you cannot change. If something is outside the realm of control, find what you can get invigorated by it, even if it just spurs you to action. Makes you a better person, challenges you. Yeah, I know. I know you do. Can't stop lying. That's one of the reasons we love you. One of the many reasons. Al, thanks, dude. You should be wearing a monk's cloak. Yeah, it's just too hot here. Hola. Bien, et tú? You know which room you're going to be in for the brunch? No, not yet. They'll. It will just say Hal's room when I show up. I will tweet it out. Hold on, 1 second. I'm gonna check something. Yeah. Okay. Coming back, I'm here. I'm coming back, I'm here. There we go. On my absentee ballot requires a signature only if I do not.
Back in 15 seconds.
Thanks. Stayed off Twitter for years. Oh, thanks.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. It's now time for the happy ending. Yay!
The happy ending is that I think we still got a couple of callers. So let me grab at least one more before the end of the show, even though I've been riding the brakes on this. Who do we have, Paul? I think we have another one.
Up next is Robert and his wife, Mrs. Robert.
Oh, right on.
I called you Mrs. Robert. Hey, Al, happy birthday.
Oh, hey.
What's up?
How are you?
I got to be on hold, and I got to hear a kid from Harvard. I got to hear Paul, who could teach at Harvard, and then I could probably, manage wrestlers or something. I don't know.
He could be security at Harvard, right? Right. He could clear the campus of. He could clear the campus of ne'er-do-wells, right? Go ahead.
Hey, I busted up on a tweet that you had. You know about how Donald Trump was going to spin the booing of the being at the RGB.
Yeah, I saw your response video. I appreciate that. That was great to see. For those of you that don't know, I tweeted out that we're 24 hours away from Trump saying, "Can you believe they booed the corpse of Ruth Bader Ginsburg? That's just horrifying." And they were yelling, "Vote her out." I couldn't believe it. Like that because that's his kind of spin.
No. Hell no.
They were not booing me. Yeah.
Ruth, they weren't booing me. They were saying Ruth.
Boo, Ruth. Right.
I think was the part in the back side with this Ruth.
Right.
But anyways, I called for a couple things. I'm going to let my wife talk because she's a medical doctor and she had something about herd immunity and basically the pre-existing conditions with the with the COVID. And I'm going to introduce you to her. Her name is Mary Ann, and she's beautiful, and this is her first time. Go eat.
Hi.
Oh, isn't that sweet? Hi, Hal. How are you?
I'm spectacular.
I'll try to be brief. It's hard to get a word in.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's hard to get a word in edgewise when you're married to Robert. But so I find it very interesting that the same people who are pushing herd immunity are also the same people who are trying to get rid of Obamacare and obviously the pre-existing clauses. So they basically want 90% of people in America to get this and become uninsured. And obviously that's going to help large companies and, not have to pay benefits and all of that. But, eventually it's going to hurt the insurance company. If, if I'm an average American person and why would I buy health insurance if everything, in the future is going to be not covered?
Right.
We're going to end up going back to a barter system and paying with chicken and eggs.
Right.
And,
which is kind of, I think, what they shoot for, by the way. They have this idea that the future would be a lot better for them if it was more like a cross between the Old West and Thunderdome. Because, like I said, I don't believe that Trump and his supporters are Christians. I believe that they are Darwinists who have delusions of fitness. And they believe somehow they're not going to be the ones that will get this or die or have accidents and need medical care. And it's other people that happens to.
When in reality, they are probably the weakest links themselves. And their gene pool wouldn't have been populated or continued if it hadn't been for their, just being lucky to be born into, richness instead of poverty.
They're all lucky. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
That's right. But the other unspoken thing here, is that they're pushing for people not to get COVID testing. As Robert said, I work in healthcare. Every day I have conversations with patients, and they're like, I probably have this virus. My symptoms are mild. If I get tested, 1, I'm going to have to quarantine for 14 days and miss work. And 2, now I'm afraid that it'll be a pre-existing illness, and I won't get health care in the future.
That's right.
And so, not so subtly, they're squashing the numbers. Less people are going to want to get tested.
Yeah.
And it's very sinister because, we know that we need to do testing to control it, but they really don't care.
You can also notice that the positivity rate is going up in a bunch of states. it's like at 14%, I think, in a couple of states. The more you test and the more the broader your testing goes, you get a lower positivity rate because most people don't have it. And so you'll bring that number down. The rise in the positivity rate means that there's an increase in testing people only if they're showing symptoms, only if they're sick. And what that does is, it catches it too late, and it doesn't catch the asymptomatic spread in the rest of the state, and it artificially lowers the numbers, while they argue that testing, he's going, the more testing, the more cases we have. Well, the opposite is true in this case, is that they're only testing the people who are sick. Therefore, that positivity rate should be less than 10% if they're testing properly, if not less than 5% as you drive it down, right?
That's exactly correct. We at our workplace, we measure our positivity rate on a weekly basis, and if we're not below 10%, we're not testing enough people, and that's exactly it's the statistics, the denominator factor. Exactly.
That's right.
I have one last point to make. And our president likes to project, as we know. So every time he blames somebody else, we know he's guilty of something. This is something that the media, has really made a big deal out of. We know that he knew about coronavirus and how poorly we were going to do in January. Those senators or Congress people who took all their money out of the stock market, they were informed in January. He confessed to it on the Woodward tape. In February, he, quote, sold or gave, altruistically to China and South Korea all of our closets full of PPE.
Right. He emptied the cupboards, as it were. Yeah.
He emptied the cupboards for a quick buck, and he actually, I remember seeing him on TV being, kind of, proudful of the fact that I just made America some money from off the Chinese. I sold it to them. So then comes March, and now the pandemic is real, and his advisors are telling him, you're in trouble. So then he pressures the CDC to say masks are not important. Because how could he go to the American public and say, this is real, the only thing we can do is to fight this is social distancing and wearing masks. And, oh, by the way, I sold the masks to the Chinese.
Right.
And so no one's put all those three things together, Yeah.
Absolutely. There's
and so that's why they push for herd immunity, and and we've seen how well that's done.
Right, exactly. And we know for a fact that there is that statistically, like Rand Paul literally said in the committee hearing they had with Fauci and the heads of the CDC and NIH, Dr. Hahn and Renfield, when Rand Paul brought this idea up that he said literally, we know that lockdowns only prevent the hospitals from being overwhelmed, but they don't lower the number of people infected who will die of the disease. That remains stable, which is a complete lie. I mean, it's a flat out, it's an intentional misreading of the statistics, but it's cartoonishly ignorant that, of course, if you slow the spread down over the course of a year and people who eventually get it after a treatment is available or exposed to it after a vaccine comes up aren't going to die, that you absolutely do save those lives. But secondly, this idea that that Sweden, because they went for herd immunity, had a lower death rate, say, than the United States, for example. Well, that's because our death rate is horrifying and we have a broader populace. But they also compared to the other states just like them in the surrounding area, which has a lot more to do with what the infection rate does to that particular group of people, what their genetic predispositions and comorbidities are like. Because I got news for every American. The Swedish people in general are far more fit than we are and have a much better diet and a better ongoing healthcare system that would lower the death rate overall beyond the fact that, whatever their herd immunity argument would be. And I want to thank you for calling in. We're at the end of the show. The crucial point on this, though, is wear a mask, wash your hands, and avoid public gatherings if you don't have to until such time as there's a vaccine or a available track and trace program where you can protect yourself. Thank you so much for calling in. And Robert, thank you for letting her speak finally, just shutting the F up occasionally for her because she made great points. Thank you guys for tuning into the HalSparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. We're here every Saturday, 9 to 11 Pacific time, 11 to 1 Central time on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. And we stream at twitch.tv/HalSparks. Thank you for joining us. Become a Patreon supporter if you can. It was my birthday, so that could be a birthday gift, belated. There you go. Anyways, thanks so much. Stick around for Dick K.
All right, Hal, great show. I promise I'll be better next time.
You did great, man. It was totally good. Yeah, I just didn't know if you were sidecarring it with him or if you were there by yourself. You did fantastic. Not a problem at all. So good. So cheers.
I appreciate that, and happy belated birthday.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I'll see you next week. Hear you next week.
All right, see you, Hal.
Okay,
bye.
Okay, bye. All right, well, we kill clean feed, and we're back to normal. And now, just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Just the two of us. All right, now, hold on. Hold on. Let's see this whole share thing or whatever. I was disappearing. All right, so here you go. I'll move my chair out of the way. You guys are just going to have to trust me. Talk amongst yourselves until I get a camera here. So, 1, 2. 10. 20. 30. 40. 51. What's up? Ta-da! Shout it like you have a pair. There are other people in the house. Not a bit of sweat. No, not even cracking a sweat. I do 50 at a run most times. No photo, no shirt. So I know. I've been on her about it, Gonzo, and other things. What? I was going by twos. I can do dancing pecs. The shirt's a little dark for it. Okay, so. Oh, Amy's in the Moderna vaccine trial. That's fascinating. You have to keep us posted, Amy. No sound? Oh. There's sound, is there not? Can you not hear me? Did I shut off my mic by doing push-ups? What happened? I did one. Thanks, Gonzo. Don't forget your flu shots this fall. This is true. Everybody. Now, we were talking about Biden doing push-ups on stage before his debate on Tuesday. Thoughts? I think it's a hilarious idea. I'm going to be live streaming the debate. I'll be, if you guys want to join me to watch it, we will. I'm back and forth about how much I'll interrupt because it could make it fairly long. Whether we should just watch it together and I can just kind of comment over top of it, or what. But I feel like Biden. There's a lot of people talking about what attacks Trump is going to have on Biden and how he's going to go after him and bring up Hunter and a bunch of other stuff. It's obvious garbage. And short of taking a shot at Beau just to be cruel, which I don't understand how that would be helpful. I feel like Biden's strategy is and should be to bait Trump into being the jerk. because everybody's worried about, Biden's got this fiery temper and he can get pissed sometimes, which I kind of like. But yeah. MSNBC is warning that masks will be forever. Yeah, they won't be forever. That's just silly. I yelled at the TV, remember this 1918 Spanish flu, but they didn't hear me. Oh, that's exactly right. It's just silly. Of course we're going to find a way around this. It's 2020. That's like, can you imagine people going on the news and just saying AIDS is permanent? Ebola will be with us forever. Like, it's just stupid. Hey, thanks, T-Brock. Masks may be forever on me in close public spaces. Maybe not. Masks developing immunity is important. There was a story this week, and I tried to find it before we finished the show, but I can't. I'll have to look it up. That masks themselves help you, build immunity. See. There's also an article about what's called the ICAM protocol, which is immunosupport, giving people vitamin C and zinc, corticosteroids against inflammation, which is effectively dexamethasone, what they're talking about, anticoagulants against blood clots, so baby aspirin, and macrolides to help fight infection, so antibacterial, and antibiotics, essentially. And giving them all four in a giant dump into your system to fight, so that basically it makes your blood septic to the disease. Rand Paul wants to do another investigation into Hunter Biden, supported by Jordan. Yeah, they won't find anything. Keep looking. For all this, all they do is attack the president, and he's been fighting this impeachment hoax, blah, blah, blah. The reason they say that is because they know all of their hunts that they're going, after Biden for or whatever are hoaxes. And so they're just kind of, I guess it kind of, it's a level of projection, but also it has a lot to do with them, managing expectations about the results of theirs. Trump got impeached. He was impeached for something genuine. He wasn't removed from office because he had a protection racket going on in the Republican Party. But when it comes to the Durham report and all that nonsense that they expect to be some sort of October surprise, it's just a massive dud. I'm spending hours talking about how Biden called him Donald during the debate while ignoring the fact that Donald referred to his opponent as Sleepy Joe the whole time, completely with how a current POTUS would get a title, but a former VP doesn't. Right. No, they'll call him Mr. Vice President. Yes, take your vitamin D. Yes. Okay, so you got one for the MST 3000 debate show. I agree. Yeah, no evidences, no witnesses. It's just a bunch of flailing, Gonzo. It really is. It's just, and to some degree, again, this is a hassle. It's gross. It's embarrassing for them, and it's annoying, and it slows things down, and it shows what their priorities are. That they're really attacking Biden over his son, over stuff that they know they themselves wish they could get away with if it was actually real. Make no mistake, Trump's attacks on Hunter Biden are out of absolute jealousy. This story about walking out of China with $1.5 billion, you could see Trump salivate every time it's brought up. Now, never mind the fact that in reality, they got those funds 4 years before Hunter Biden joined the company. And as a manager of those funds, he sat at a round table and helped them pick, and in many ways, he was like a police officer for where the money went and that it got spent the way it was supposed to. So I give you money to invest in a business or something like that. Let's say I trust you, then I trust that sort of internally you're your own manager of it. I don't need somebody looking over your shoulder where you're spending that money because I believe in what you're doing in that process, right? But let's say you've had problems in the past, a couple of run-ins with the law, so I might need somebody to watch and make sure that if I give you this investment, you put it where it's supposed to go. You pay the bills with it instead of socking it away, or in the case of Burisma, hiding it in Russia and undermining the energy sector of Ukraine so that the economy collapses so that Russia can take it over, which has been the goal of Putin and everybody since the 90s. So having someone on your board to, that like, okay, we're your investment guys. You give us the money. We'll take a finder's fee. We'll put it where you think it wants to go. And we'll make sure that whoever we give it to spends it the way it's supposed to so that you get your investment back plus interest and plus dividends or whatever their arrangement was. When Rosemont Seneca, the company that Hunter Biden worked for, when it brought the investment money to Burisma, Burisma was horribly corrupt and broken. The Ukrainian government had started separating itself and getting rid of corruption and had started working to do that. But the energy sector was completely being scuttled by Russia through sock puppets from within, including the guy who had to sign off on allowing these guys to be managers of the money because he wanted the money in, expecting that they would siphon it off like the rest of the money. And when it didn't happen, he left the country. And Burisma was a corrupt, dysfunctional company. Hunter Biden and Rosemont Seneca as a company brought money in, managed where that money was spent on behalf of investors, and now Burisma is a functioning, profitable company. Saying that Hunter Biden is part of the problem of corruption in Ukraine is like saying somebody who flips houses is responsible for the leaks in the roof before they bought the place. It's saying that the Magnolia couple are, all they do are buy awful houses. Like if you'd sum up the house flippers as, oh yeah, those are the people who buy rotten houses. Yeah, but they fix them up. They fix up rotten houses. That's kind of a good thing. That's the story. So this idea, and by the way, this is private business getting investment from all over the place and doing what private business does. If they have a problem with pooled investments coming into the energy sector of this country or any other, and operating, across foreign borders, by all means, pass a law. Go for it. Let's see the Republicans who argue for a law that would put Hunter Biden or anybody like him out of business. Won't happen. It's absurd. They're for it. They're just not for it when someone else is successful at it, because Donald Trump is a failure. He's been living off the, other people's investments and his father's fortune for his entire life. And his children, the only deals they can make apparently are coke deals in hotel rooms before they blast out what they hope will be a viral video in the middle of the night, but not sure why. Yeah, Janet, there is no there for these folks. And there is no arguing that pre-Rosemont Seneca, Burisma was a corrupt company, where most of the money that came in from outside investors ended up being siphoned into Russia and not going to build pipelines and other stuff. And after Rosemont Seneca, not only did the energy sector stabilize in that country, but they had a legit election. They elected a comedian as their president. Of course, what's not to like? Yeah. Hunter Biden is just the same as Trump's kid, so stop with that. No, he isn't. They're worse. They are absolutely manipulating the halls of power to get what they want. The prosecutor that got kicked out of Ukraine, that Biden withheld the funding for, he was in charge of doing that on behalf of the administration and Congress. That guy was a Russian sock puppet. That prosecutor that he wanted out of there, who was, allegedly, supposedly going after Hunter Biden, why was he going after Hunter Biden? Why? Why was that guy going after Hunter Biden? Is it because corruption was new to Burisma and it was Hunter Biden's fault? No. It's because Hunter Biden and Rosemont Seneca came in with the mission statement that they would stabilize the Ukrainian energy sector and remove Russian influence, to give the Russian energy sector a run for its money, and give Germany and other European states an alternative source of fuel. They attacked him on day one. The Russians have been after him about this the entire time. Taking away Russia's oil and gas dominance in the region would change their behavior in the world. The stuff that, that's actually the stabilized energy sector in Ukraine is actually valuable to democracy the world over and to that country's stability, and defends them against Russia. Ivanka Trump getting a bunch of trademarks because her dad made a deal with them, or getting her the stuff that she buys from there and sells in this country excluded from the tariffs, is wholly different. I am from the UK. As for Americans saying things different from me, I do not know, but wait. Correcting my error. Thanks, dude. Sure, no problem. Yeah, we have, need to get rid of the Electoral College. Yeah, that's a good argument. I mean, that's effectively the difference of the parties. You may not understand that, or people may not, recognize what parties are actually founded on as a principle, most people, I think the closest they have is the idea that the Green Party is based on largely being environmental one-note voters, right? That's what the Green Party was founded on. Well, the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans is the Republicans were based on a federalist system which leans towards senatorial rule and electoral college rule. And the Democrats were one person, one vote. That each individual vote should count. Now, those parties switched sides in the 60s. The modern Democrats are the Republicans pre-1963, and modern Republicans are Democrats pre-63. So originally, the Democrats did the one person, one vote idea, being on the idea that as slaveholders and people that had more servants and other people that they could force to vote one way, that they would weight the volume of humans in the South. Southern Democrats would fight for having each person being counted, and yet they would have more control over those votes. So to shore that up, to make sure that they didn't have outsized control, that the slave states didn't have outsized control, the Republicans fought for a more stable overlying system of senatorial and electoral college control based on the value of the states and land ownership as opposed to individuals. So you couldn't just count people that you could force to vote your way, factory workers and slaves and the like, and say, well, these guys they all have the right to vote now, and I'm going to point their vote in the direction I want. That all changed once people got the right, women and people of color got the right to vote, and it was actually antithetical to the democratic way in the old days, because you couldn't control that vote anymore. Women could vote, and everybody. So there were more people voting, which was against their kind of, it caught their trick. The Republicans, on the other hand, wanted to go with. They were actually doing. They ended up shifting sides because they wanted to control large swaths of votes. So modern Republicans are for senatorial control and the Electoral College, and modern Democrats are still focused on one person, one vote, but a more genuine version of it than was originally presented. So you're a Democrat if you believe that every vote counts and that there are no red states and blue states and that the popular vote matters, the will of the people across the entire country. And you're a Republican if you believe that Montana deserves 2 senators even though it has less people in it than Santa Monica, California. And that each of those senators can do an anonymous hold on any bill they want. Stop any bill as a single person and never say why or admit that it's even them stopping it. The debates are, I want to say 8 o'clock Eastern, maybe, perhaps. Southern Democrats are not the same as Western and Northern Democrats. No, they're not. Well, they're more common now. There's just fewer of them because the ones that most of the Southern Democrats switched sides and became Republicans over the Voting Rights Act. That was the big switch. The Dixiecrats, they called them. All the Dixiecrats became Republicans. You have 1 representative, you should not have 2 senators. Exactly. One person, one vote means only 2 states decide the offices. Nope, not going to happen. Not necessarily. That was a factor of the industrial age. That doesn't have to be the case. And you also have to believe that the vast majority of, urban centers somehow will disregard the will or the needs of the southern states or the less populous states. And what you're arguing is that the less populous states should have an outsized voice. What happened to Johnny? He's doing house stuff, so he couldn't make it today. So he'll be back next week. Thanks, Carnelli. I appreciate it. I try. You all seen the Rhode Island Dems? They're weird. Yeah. Yeah, my head is spinning, need to lay down. History, it's crazy. There's a lot of differences. I mean, Dinesh D'Souza runs his entire media message on the idea that the Dixiecrats never existed. That the Republicans of now are the same Republicans that would have fought to free the slaves, which is patently ridiculous. And that the Democrats of old are the Democrats of today, even though, I'm just saying, there's no point where Southern Democrats in the 1800s would have, in their media messaging, said black women are the voice of the Democratic Party. You see what I'm saying? Now. I read there has to be a law passed that the DC has to vote with popular vote. Was that no? There is a group of states that are joining together in a pact to commit to voting, sending their electoral college votes in the same, because you can do whatever you want with your electoral college votes. So the real change and the practical change would be state by state to get state legislators and governors to sign a bill into the state constitution of each state that says they will give their, whichever way the popular vote goes, they will give their electoral college vote. Idiots like D'Souza make money off this nonsense. They make a lot of money off this nonsense. They really do. 3 hours, Facebook Live reporter field day. Yeah. You have a political education, you have a ton of knowledge. Well, as a comedian who's done political comedy for a long time, I grew up a policy wonk. The way I ended up on Stephanie Miller's radio show and why I started doing my own Saturday show on radio was because I read the Affordable Care Act all the way through. because people were holding it up and going, no one has read this. So I was like, okay, I will. And it took me a little over a weekend. It was like 4 days. Because there's a lot of repeating parts and a lot of referential stuff in it. So, and it's double spaced, the version I had. So it's about, yes, it's 3,000 pages, but it's double spaced and a lot of it's referencing sections again and again. That said, you know, I started doing stand-up when I was 15. I was doing political jokes when I was 16, 17 years old at the Clout Club in Chicago in front of adults. So I had to know what I'm talking about. And my thing with stand-up has always been that since comedy is largely about surprise, you need to know 20% more about a topic you're going to joke about than anyone in your audience possibly could. And the extreme example I give is that of a brain surgeon. If I want to do brain surgery jokes in my act, I need to know 20% more about brain surgery than a brain surgeon in my audience. Now, I didn't go to school for brain surgery, so I couldn't possibly know all that they know. What I can know is 20% more about the topic than they do because I know it from an outsider's point of view they can't even picture. So I can know what people feel about it. I can look into, you know, the ancillary stories about it, the narrative in the populace about it, stuff that brain surgeon in their myopic experience of their trade may never even experience, but is tangentially very important to the topic. That's how I can expand my knowledge base. I can grow a base around what I'm talking about. And then from that, build jokes that doctor wouldn't even expect because I know elements that that doesn't occur to them. And in this case, especially when it comes to, you know, politics and whatnot, history, memorizing important moments in history and the details around them and how they happened is really, I find, fascinating. And then, of course, knowing what bills actually say in them and not what the public at large thinks they say is crucial. And the more you look into that, the more you look at what, like we were talking about Roe v. Wade today, that I think, you know, when I think of Roe v. Wade, I know, and it's part of my regular knowledge, that it is about medical privacy. It's not about abortion. It's why it came up. But it was fought on the idea that you have a right to privacy when it comes to your conversations with your doctor and the medical procedures you choose to have. Most people don't think that. They think it was that it strategically gives people the right to an abortion. It does not. It gives you a right to medical privacy, and that if a doctor can provide any service, you have the right to get that service from them, and nobody gets to know except you and your doctor because it's nobody's business. Most people don't think of it that way. They think of it as the abortion bill. And because of that, they don't look at the ancillary effects of what happens if you overturn or get rid of it that have nothing to do with abortion, but that most of the, you know, supposedly the anti-choice crowd would, if they knew, they would flip out about it. Because the overturning of Roe v. Wade would eventually end up in the internet publication of your medical records. That's just the reality. And if people were more aware of that, I think they would. You would see Republicans especially fighting to protect Roe v. Wade, especially the Donald Trumps of the world, who, I mean, the dude won't even release his taxes. I think we're getting a legit medical, description of his physical state from his doctor. Dude says he's an inch taller than he actually is. He wears lifts. That's why he stands leaning forward. According to Noel Kessler, he wears an adult diaper all the time because of incontinence. You think we're going to hear about that? Do you think, I mean, any of this stuff? Some of it's not our business, and I don't care if it doesn't affect him doing his job. Honest to God. The only reason it matters is because he creates this mirage of Ubermensch, Superman strength, which is just garbage. He's hyped up on speed half the time. And when he crashes from it, it's a mess. He even said it the other day. He gets a shot in the ass, and then what happens afterwards is not pretty. Well, that's him talking about his experience. Because after a rally, the next day he sounds like a corpse with, like with somebody squeezing air out of it. Yeah, he's in perfect health and he'll outlive everybody. Right, that's the idea. I do not believe that's why he leans. All women wear heels and they don't lean. Most of the time, that's because their foot is up. Heels and lifts are not the same thing, Pauline. There is some discussion that he has damage to his prefrontal cortex that makes him lean forward, but he definitely wears heel lifts. It's that the reason women don't lean forward is because their shoe slopes visibly. When you wear lifts, it gives you the illusion of height, but if you only wear the heel lifts and not the full foot lifts, which is what when men are trying to hide their height, they don't wear the front part, that's what makes you lean forward. If you wear high shoes, like Kiss boots, you don't lean forward. And if you wear shoes where your foot is sloped like this, you don't lean forward either, because you're basically, it's supporting you on walking on your tiptoes, you know, or on the balls of your feet. That's not what he's doing. He's pretending to stand flat, but it's making him lean forward. So, yeah. He definitely has a damaged brain. That's an entirely different thing. Let's see. Talking about multivitamins with iron, D3, 1,500 milligrams a day has kept me from coronavirus because I worked with the public transportation, but I'm okay. Yeah, vitamin D has a huge impact on this as a respiratory disease, but also because it's also a vascular disease. If you're over the age of 50, like I am, taking baby aspirin to protect against, taking a mild anticoagulant during this time until such time as you can get a vaccine is a good idea too. Because there's a bunch of people who've died of thrombosis and some other stuff, and it's because of that, because their blood's coagulating. Neurological damage can also explain why he goes in circles in the White House lawn. Yes. Being a communicator for third-party sponsor of NRA, worst job person can have worst job person can have a job that shouldn't exist. Well, the NRA is, is a funnel for Russian money. Doctor told me D3, but no aspirin, no SAIDs at all. Okay. Any possibility of me getting into politics? Yeah, that's what my 60s will be for. I'm going to run in my 60s. Why sickle cell and sickling can be a big issue? Yes. Spoke to a local friend I haven't seen in months. She was in the carnival dream, had COVID over the holiday, laid up for 8 weeks, still suffering from lingering bronchitis. Yeah, that's damage to the lungs. Could it be late-stage syphilis? Probably. If I just slap him on the ass before the debate, nice diaper, Donnie. I mean, just, literally him going, Biden saying, well, hey, I'm not the one wearing a diaper. You would turn, I mean, he would go into a rage. You would see the man, like his face would go beet red, he would start sweating, and then you would hear a loud squishing sound as he filled his pants with soup. The Streamlabs thing is automatic, guys. I'm sorry if it's kicking. I'll trim. It shouldn't. Do we really know he wears diapers? No, I have not seen him put them on, but all measures indicate, and he's apparently people that worked on the set of The Apprentice knew it. Yeah, soup for my pants. Do I know Al Franken personally? No, I ran into him a few times when I filled in for a week on, 2 weeks, on Air America back in the day when he ran for office. I took over the slot he left open. That's where I met Rachel Maddow. She was on right after me, and she would she would be there before I showed up for my show, using up using the copy machine. She's great. She's an inspiration in terms of research. I painted a gross picture. You're welcome. Is your diaper boxers or briefs? He said avoiding STDs was his Vietnam, but I think syphilis is strong in him. Yeah, it's very possible. It really is. Biden just needs 2 or 3 of those zingers to pull out each time Trump appears to calm down. Yeah, just to keep him. I agree. You know Randy Rhodes? I've met her. I like Randy Rhodes a lot. My friend is a nurse and a Trumper, said he definitely shows signs of a diaper. Yeah. No need for Biden to lower himself. It's going to be a tough debate. Topics don't lend themselves to bringing up some issues. He needs to be creative. I agree. Again, that goes to not, just having those 2 punches when you come in. You have to go, what is he expecting? One of the reasons, if you're a student of Kung Fu or a lover of it, you may have found out that one of the reasons why so many animal forms of martial arts developed over the 1,000 years that Chinese Kung Fu developed was that there are some baseline fighting styles that people immediately go to. When human beings fight, eventually everybody gets up into boxing. Americans are boxers, for example. So when you get into a fight, you'll often see people, the rise of kickboxing and Krav Maga have shifted that a little over time. But most people, when they think of fighting, it's all fists, right? And they go immediately to this. And your nervous system, if you've actually fought, you know what to expect. I'm going to get this. I'm going to get roundhouses. I might get a straight shot from here. I've got to work, the jab, and the straight punch is coming. And then you work the body and the head. And basically you can, if you've done any fighting or any studying of boxing, you know where most of the punches are coming from. And so you develop some defenses against them. And if you're in a fight against somebody who fights exactly the same way, you'll keep your guard up. You won't expose your midsection. You'll lower your elbows when a side punch is coming in. You may have some hand blocks or whatever. And if you're freehand fighting, you may block and cross and that kind of stuff. Okay. Do what we call in martial arts cutting angles, which is if somebody's punching straight ahead, you're blocking this direction, letting it slide off, taking some of the force that way, and striking at the same time. So this is where the expansion of fighting comes from. But after a while, everybody knows how to fight that way. So somebody comes up and they're like, hey, I'm going to fight. And you go into, crane style. And this dude's like, what the hell is this? And you have, if you're a qualified fighter, a bit of a drop on them in that moment. Their nervous system is thrown off. You have a different style than they do. And they don't quite have natural defenses for it. So most people look at a debate as a boxing match. And if you walk in there going, okay, they're going to throw this kind of punch, I'm going to counter with this, they're going to throw that kind of, I'm going to throw this kind of, they're going to counter with this, then you will be drawn into whatever fight is the dominant fight being presented in front of you. And if the other person gets to define the style and it's not your style, which is what happens in a debate a lot of times, when you see somebody lose a debate, it's because they let the other person set the style. They get, what's called a Gish Gallop going. Trump will do a lot of Gish Gallops, which means say 9 things which are all false. Your opponent answers one of them and calls it a lie, specifically dealing with it because it's the most egregious. And the illusion to the audience is that the other 8 are not lies. You didn't attack them. You attacked the one big one. You attacked, you let it slide. So the answer to a Gish Gallop is everything my opponent said is either an outright lie or misstates the truth intentionally. But the worst is this. That's how you handle a Gish Gallop in a debate, for the record, in case you ever find yourself there. But the idea is that, Trump is this guy that'll bring a gun to a knife fight, and he's going to be crazy, and he's going to throw you all these weird, left hooks that you're not expecting. So that, what you do in prep for Trump is see what gets under his skin. I would look at, if I was Biden's people, I would look at what drives him crazy from reporters that have asked him questions. The way the reporters have gotten his goat, and when he leaves the room, when he walks out, look at those. Not how he handles debates, because how he debated Hillary he was just a lurky mess, and he looked for cheap shots. But many of which won't work with Biden in general. And especially because the format of these, because of COVID, is going to be different. They're going to be either sitting or they're going to be standing at a podium the entire time. They're not walking around talking to an audience like a town hall. There's not going to be that opportunity for that. So what Biden and his people need to do is look at when he's been shook by stuff, either in meetings when you've heard anecdotal stories about him being shook, or by reporters who have shook him. Where he gets really defensive and falls apart, and phrase your statements accordingly. Have your Gonzo, he's pretty good. That's a dirty question. Trump's response when he gets knocked down. Yeah, talking about Russia would be part of it, but his people will defend him on the Russia thing. She did very nice. I did see Bobby's message. Thank you. Yeah, and dismissing him is another way of doing it. Going, the president. I mean, the easiest one is President Trump wants to talk about these things or bring that stuff up to hide his abject failure when it comes to COVID. He's even ignoring the number. He can't even bring it. He brings up that I can't mention Law and Order, which is a lovely show, by the way. I've liked all the versions. But apparently screaming Law and Order on Twitter doesn't actually change the status of violent crime in the country. I don't know if you've noticed that. But in doing that, like attacking, like the president wants to hide the fact that he won't even bring up that we've lost 200,000 plus Americans. And he says it's virtually nobody is affected. That's how you do it. On all of these things. Anytime he's brings up Hunter or some nonsense like this, the easy response is, Mr. President, I would say the exact same thing if I were you, because anything to cover up the fact that that new unemployment numbers are ticking up as the stimulus that the Democrats fashioned in the House has dried up. We need a new stimulus to protect people as we enter what could be a prolonged first wave or the second wave of this as the flu season comes up. We need a strategy in place nationwide to track and trace this so people can be made aware of this. We don't, whatever happened to that Google app you were paying for? The other thing, too, is what's his health plan? A couple of executive orders that Republicans would fight if he ever tried to implement them as law that he can't get through a Congress he controls. I think Chris Wallace will be pretty fair about it because he's no fan of Trump's, but he is a Republican. So it will be accidental fairness. Yeah. Thanks, Sweet Mel. I will hydrate. I'm out of tea. I'm gonna sign off at noon because I have to. Sexy Liberal is tonight, and I've got to be ready for for that. So, yeah, Trump does not have any plans. Can't like that enough. Listening how? I don't know what you were referring to. I've got two chats that are running concurrently, so I apologize if some people go by and I don't see them as I'm watching the other one. Don't feel like I'm ignoring you. Let's see. Yeah, Panica there. The Trump methodology is mean, nasty questions, mainly because he can't handle them. And here's to my liberal, progressive, democratic friends, those questions were Republican talking points. Complaining about that is ridiculous. It's what the right does when they say it's a liberal talking point. They're just liberals saying liberally things, and those are liberal talking points. A person who's running for the president of the United States should be able to handle anybody's talking points. Feel me? If I was running for office and you put me in a debate and the moderator was a Republican and all they were doing was feeding Republican talking points to my opponent, I would be able to handle it. And hopefully over the course of it, convince some of those Republicans that they are mistaken about me, my issues, or their issues and their beliefs. Because that would be my job as a public servant running for office. See what I mean? I don't care if one side is trying to slant it. I want my president or my candidate to be able to handle those things. The first thing you should be able to handle is your opponent's talking points. And if you can't and you get thrown off by it, maybe you're not the person who should be dealing with it. I mean, this was the defense of Bernie half the time. It was like Bernie, they keep asking him these Republican talking points. Well, Bernie can handle himself. And if he can't, maybe it's the argument itself that's the problem. I mean, there are rebuttals to every Republican talking point. Find them. Nail them. Like, have it ready. How do you not know they're coming? They're the talking points. I understand being blindsided by something that they throw in your way, and you're like, well, we weren't even going to talk about where did this come from, you know? But for God's sake, if you know this is something that's on Fox News every night, and this is a drum they beat every single day, you know, get your long explanations, your medium explanations, and your short quips in order. How military pay raise. Obama when Democrats controlled the House. 2009, yeah, 3.9% and 3.4% when Republicans did. 2011, 1.4, 1.6, 1.7, 5. Yeah, Obama had the biggest military pay raise in the last 20 years. Biden is center left. But maybe by modern standards. Because the country has lurched so far right politically. Biden is radical left, and what is AOC? They're not coming from the same place. By the way, they absolutely are coming from the same place. They just have a different strategy to get there. Again, the difference, this is the most annoying part of the sort of internal domestic strife in the Democratic Party, is that the goals are the same. It's a strategy argument. The problem with a lot of the progressives that I have is that they argue that the strategy argument is actually a premise argument, and it isn't. Do you want to solve the problem or don't you? We both agree that the problem exists. I just have a different way of solving that problem than you do. It doesn't mean I don't care. So presenting it as if I don't care, which is what the whole like corporate and establishment Dems argument is all about, which is about really a voter suppression argument from the the TYTs of the world, is saying that when you say that, you're saying your motivation and your desire to actually fix stuff isn't the same, when it absolutely is. They're all, I mean, they all have the same platform. I mean, look at Biden's sheets of stuff that he wants to accomplish on Joe's vision on his website. For God's sake. The only thing center left about the left is that the far left may be, just like the far right is anti-democratic. They're not pro-democracy. They want some sort of locked-in authoritarian system that can dictate to the other side my way or the highway. And they don't understand that democracy is a fundamental balance between differing opinions. So the center left and center right folks are Democrats, are the democracy people. And that includes Republicans who view themselves as center right. Those are people who are pro-democracy. Other than that, I have no opinion. No. QIT aren't getting bad. They've always been this. They are a voter suppression arm of the Republican Party. If you believe that the Young Turks or Jimmy Dore are progressives, then you believe that CBN and Pat Robertson are the true voice of Christianity, and that Donald Trump is a huge successful businessman because of The Celebrity Apprentice. You get me? You understand what I'm saying? It's a mirage it is a hyena in sheep's clothing. Yeah, wheels and walls yeah. There are no Republicans left. They're Trumplicans. Yeah, well, and a lot of the people who used to be Republicans, that's all these, right-leaning independents or non-voters who dropped out because they're embarrassed by their Bush votes. Right, signing a bogus executive order like it's written law, so delusional. I remember him saying that President Obama didn't do anything but sign executive orders in golf, and that's all he's doing. Exactly. It's a projection. It's what he wants. He wanted Obama's job because he thought it was cush. He didn't actually recognize the work that went in. He's exactly like his voters, and exactly like a lot of, far left Democrats who take democracy for granted as well. That you get in, you dictate your position, you fight your way, and you think that will solve it. It will create it because you fought. It doesn't matter if you actually get a law passed, as long as you went down swinging for your absolute, package, like the all or nothing package. It's better to lose the all or nothing package than get any incremental change that actually saves lives and protects people. It's disgusting, and it shows that they are, that in the case of TYT and Jimmy Dore, they are absolute frauds. Unequivocal frauds. They would have to have the veneer of progressive belief to lure people in and demoralize the vote and to fuel, gun up right-wing opposition to some sort of bizarre left-wing conspiracy they think exists. I mean, it's insane. So, yeah. I'm not, I've watched a few videos of TYT. I've never had the feeling they were for Trump. They love Bernie. No, the Bernie thing is a ruse to cover for the fact that they don't want people to vote for Democrats and soften the vote for Trump. A lot of we found out that, from the Mueller investigation and others, that whether you believe Trump was a part of it or not, and he certainly was, but whether you believe that or not, it's unequivocal. It's obvious that the Russians pretended to be Bernie supporters, pretended to be Black Lives Matter supporters, pretended to be, hyper left-wing groups to foment discord and make people hate the establishment Democrats and all that, and cause that infighting to soften the vote. And 78,000 votes made the difference in the Electoral College last time. Washington, Michigan, and Pennsylvania went to Trump because of 78,000 votes. Jill Stein votes are people who voted for every other part of the ticket but left off president. Didn't vote for Hillary because they'd been talked out of that vote by alleged Bernie bros, which many of them online and in Facebook and stuff turned out not to be real Bernie supporters, because real Bernie supporters wouldn't really want to do that to the country, but the fake ones would. The Russian bots and the fake accounts pretending to be so horrified, blowing up the Pizzagate thing, saying she had MS, all this nonsense, so that they would soften the vote. That was the goal. And TYT is a part of that. They are anti-voting. They'll give lip service to it 3 times a show, and then the rest of the time they'll talk you out of voting. And they'll say it's a mess, and the only way is to burn the whole thing down. I mean, that's the argument all the time. Okay, my example of TYT talking about supporting Biden even in the random times that they managed to squeak it out. Do you believe that Donald Trump giving funding to Puerto Rico now, within 50 days of an election, means he gave a shit about Puerto Rico during Maria? Do you believe that? Do you believe that he really cares what happens to Puerto Rico? Or he's just recognized that he needs to buy some votes that direction or across the country in the Latino community by pretending to care about Puerto Rico. Otherwise, he's going to lose it, and Puerto Rico is going to end up with 2 senators if Biden becomes president. And the Republican Party is fighting that at all costs. Not because all Latinos or all Puerto Ricans are necessarily Democrats, but because their rhetoric and their policies over the years have driven the people of Puerto Rico away, at least for a generation. There's a lot of conservative Latinos out there who would vote for a Republican if they thought they were a decent person. So, I mean, the Christian Broadcasting Network quotes the Bible all the time. Do you believe they represent the teachings of Christ? TYT talks about liberal and progressive values all the time. They're exactly the same people. It's a farce. And the distinct difference throughout all this between me and them, and which will remain so, is that I want everyone to vote all the time and vote your truth. And I believe that over time, my argument will convince you that there's a better way. They don't. They're paid stooges. This is garbage. I mean, The Intercept, most of the Intercept's money comes from an eBay billionaire. You have to get the keys to the house before you change the paint color on the wall. Stop attacking Biden. No politicians are perfect. Right. And by the way, the fact that they're clamoring about, Biden not being a pure candidate or that he doesn't live up to some sort of standard. I'd like to remind you that the Young Turks, the show is named after the people who murdered Armenians in the Armenian genocide, and which Cenk Uygur denied forever until he decided to run for office and had to cover his ass. Why did he run for office? Why did he really run? To keep a female Democrat from getting the seat. Because he lost. He got 5,000 votes. He spent $1 million, and what did he do? Give the seat to a Republican for the first time in 20 years. That's not an accident. That's the purpose. It's a feature, not a bug. These people are grifters. Just because you watch the Christian Broadcasting Network does not mean I question your Christianity. But I don't buy for a second that Pat Robertson, the dude who took donations to bring food supplies to Africa as part of a Christian missionary thing. And then when the trucks arrived, they took these big containers off these airplanes and put them on trucks. And somebody opened the back. They found bags of rice. And after you remove the front layer of bags of rice, it was all shampoo and conditioner and soap and all this stuff that they sell in Africa for profit. They used 90 bags of rice to hide, $1 million worth of goods they were selling in Africa. And they used people who believed in the teachings of Christ that donated to them. They used those people to do that. So I don't fault people who watched TYT over the years and thought that they were, believed themselves to be true liberals or progressives at all. But that does not mean that I'm going to fall for their flim-flam or not call it out all the time. I was backstage with the TYT crowd at Politicon when they were sucking up to Ann Coulter and Van Jones. I watched them, okay? It's a show. They are as fundamentally fraudulent as Alex Jones. And I've been on Alex Jones's show too. That dude is a liar. He's done with conspiracy theories what Pat Robertson does with the Bible. Find true believers and milk them. It's horrible. Yeah. Other than that, I have no opinion. I'm dead serious. Like what and even the Justice Democrats thing that he put together. What have they ever turned a purple district blue? Have they ever turned a red district blue? Had they ever done anything but put a younger candidate in where an older candidate was? No. They play with pawns on their side of and they never move them across the board and pretend they're winning at chess. And they want you to pay for their chess school. Screw that. No. No, no, no. The hell with these people. It's grotesque. And somebody even tweeted me about like Francis Maxwell or some of the other people that are on there. Aren't they good people or whatever? No idea. If they work for TYT, I'm now at this point, after years of watching them, it is a good general rule to assume that they are frauds. That said, are there real Christians that work for CBN occasionally and do stuff for them that really believe what they believe? Sure. Are they less complicit in the fraud that goes on there? No. If they really believed in their own shit, they'd break away. I don't have a network. This isn't hard. Sorry. I mean, I go to, I ask for Patreon support, and I have different ways that people can help this, but it's absolutely their choice, and I'll keep doing it even if you guys don't. I have another career that I do as well when life is normal, and we'll continue to do that in the future as a stand-up touring and as an artist, as an actor, once production exists again, So I don't have to rely on, this as my life's work. I'm always involved in politics, not because I need to, but because I care about it. This matters. To me, this is an act of citizenry. To them, it's the one note they hit. There is no plan B. No one at the Young Turks has a plan B. No, actually, no one at the Young Turks has a plan A for their life. This is their whole life is plan B, and that plan B is bilking people. It's fraud, because the entire purpose, in every election leading up to this one especially, has been to dampen the vote turnout. Demoralize voters. Well, I mean, these people. I mean, I'm just not inspired by this. And the corporate and the establishment has always, and there's really no, and the whole thing is fixed. Be an adult. Once more into the fray. You step up every day. You don't, wait every 2 years to prune the bushes and weed your garden. Life is incremental progress. Don't believe me? Raise a child. You think that's done all at once? You think there's a revolution in parenting? You think there's a revolution in dieting? There was one. It was called fen-phen, and it killed people. David Pakman, I don't mind at all. Like he's a pretty balanced dude. He's charming. He means well. He's not, and he never talks people out of voting. He's a solid dude. He believes what he believes, and I think he's legit. I don't watch him all the time, but he seems like a nice enough guy. Kyle Kalinske, same thing as the Young Turks. Same crowd. Garbage. We should have had universal health care years ago. I know what you're saying, DC 257, but here's what I would say to you. Why? Why? Hillary Clinton put in S-chip, and the progressive and liberal base hung her out to dry. If we should have had it, then we would have had it. know what I'm saying? I mean, did you hear any of the people who were supporting Medicare for all or any of that giving Hillary Clinton credit for S-chip and taking all the attacks because of Hillary Care? Before Obamacare existed, that was the main attack on her. And the primary reason why they hated her becoming a senator and becoming Secretary of State was her attempts at expanding health care, especially for poor people. Now, they all use it. All the red states use it more than anyone. They use S-chip more than the blue states do. The blue states pay for the red states to use it. I'm sorry, did you see profiles on the Young Turks or on Kyle Kalinski's show or on Jimmy Dore's show about how Hillary Clinton really started the ball rolling to get us towards Obamacare, which would get us towards universal coverage? Maybe even one day Medicare for all? Did they? No. I love when people say, well, like when they could have, CHIP could have been great for everyone. No, it couldn't have. You know why? Because there was no political will to make it actually happen at the time. There was not an activist class that worked towards making it happen. There wasn't a support structure for it. And when she actually tried it, she got hung out to dry. You get what you get when you earn what you get. There is no, it used to, it shoulda, maybe if they'd, maybe those folks, Ruth Bader Ginsburg lied in state in the Capitol because this generation and the generation before, and Gen X did the social work over time along with her to make that a possibility. Should a woman have lied in state from the very inception of this country? Should we have, whomever, Betsy Ross or Susan B. Anthony or, should there have been a woman president in the first 9 years of America? Yeah. So? You want to go back and rework the past based on what you think is valuable now? By the way, with a brain informed by things that you actually did. Yes, Rosa Parks did lie in state. She was the first female justice, first Jewish woman. But the point I'm trying to make is all those shouldas, they're shouldas to you because you grew up in a time that was advanced by the generations before you. If you'd have grown up in the 1600s or the early 1700s, ending slavery wouldn't have occurred to you because you grew up in it. Women voting wouldn't have occurred to you because you wouldn't have grown up with the idea that women have had to vote your entire life. And that you grew up in a society that expects that equality to expand for everyone. All these advances, which we should be very proud of, we didn't invent gender equality in our generation, and the insistence that everybody acts like we did is as absurd as saying we don't have more to go. Take the win. Jesus Christ! Like, should slavery have never happened? Yeah, sure, absolutely. Should Native Americans stopped having slaves before white settlers fought a civil war and they had slaves? Yeah. Should before Cortez arrived and killed most of the Mayans and Aztecs with smallpox, should they have stopped cutting the hearts out of 20,000 people a year and consuming them? Yeah, probably. Yeah, I mean, if only we'd had Medicare for all during the Black Plague, right? For God's sake, recognize that the time you live in is based on changes that occurred behind you, and that the people, even in those times, were operating based on what they grew up in. If you believe that somebody can go to prison and pay their debt to society, and that part of the reason they end up in jail in the first place was because of the society they grew up in, and because their parents were not there, and they had drug abuse, and there was all kinds of other stuff, and there was physical abuse. And if you can believe that, why can't you say the same for the history of your own country or the history of the world at large? Rehab yourself is my message. There were abolitionists among the founding fathers. How? I know, exactly. 50% of the signers of the Declaration did not have slaves. The 3/5 argument was because the South wanted to count slaves as a whole person, even though they didn't have the right to vote and would not be allowed to have the right to vote. The South wanted them counted as a whole person because they were appropriating representation based on physical human beings. They didn't want them to have the rights of a human being, but they wanted them counted as a person. The North did not want to count slaves as a person because didn't have the right to vote, and it would take away representation from the abolitionist movement in the North and give more outsized power to the South. So the 3/5 argument was 3/5 of a person because the proportionment of free peoples in the North and slaves in the South would balance out the voting representation as far as Congress goes. The argument for making them not count as a whole person was actually from the liberal side of things, because if they were counted as a whole person, slavery would have had more representation in the government and we would have ultimately not ended slavery. Come on. So, if you believe that felons deserve a second chance and that addicts should get treatment and not incarceration, and because people can get better, then stop focusing on their felonies and their failures as addicts. And that's what you're doing both with American history and the presence of, where laws are at the time. Saying we should have had universal health care in the 80s or something is like saying, why is that person in rehab? They shouldn't have been addicted in the first place. Josiah Bartlett, yep, that's right, Gonzo. Good family line. Putting addicts in jail is evil. Exactly. And expecting 5 generations ago to have solved the problems you yourself aren't in the process of solving long term, and allowing them to go unsolved because you don't get 100% your way, is the same thing as saying addicts deserve to die of their drug overdoses. It's the same thing. There's a weird conversation going over on Facebook as per usual, but not surprising. So much of what's wrong with America today started with slavery. No. Slavery is absolutely one of America's quote-unquote original sins. But America fought a civil war to end slavery, which other countries did not. And slavery continued and continues to this day. When you hear about human trafficking all the time, that's slavery. It still exists in a lot of countries. The United States fought a war, and the White House was burned down in the process. Hundreds of thousands of Americans dead, fighting to stop slavery. And they did. We don't have that anymore. The problems that we have in this country are not that slavery itself existed. It's that we allowed, Confederate statues and a pride of the Confederacy nonsense to drag on for a long time as people pretended it was about states' rights when it was really about racism specifically. and let these assholes have these, statues around like they were chess pieces, and talk about, heritage, not recognizing that it was anti-American. And then also because we don't specifically foment an appreciation for the Northern abolitionist movement and respect for that. Because I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find, a lot of political activists, even the ones that care about race, that could name a white abolitionist or a church that was part of the movement back then that historically made a difference and ended that in this country, or any of the other aspects of it. It was that ongoing role that was part of the problem. A lot of the black people that are having problems in this country right now aren't directly having a problem because slavery once existed. They're having problems because redlining and other issues kept their parents from achieving the normal growth of wealth that the Irish or Jewish people did when they started acclimating into society while having been denied early. It's not the old problems, it's the current ones. And if you deal with those, you will help more people, which must be the goal. After, beg your pardon. Slavery may be gone, but bigotry, banned racism is very much alive here. It can be debated whether it's growing in strength. Agreed. That's what I'm talking about. You deal with it now. Oh, thanks. It is 12:15. Yes, I went over it, 50 minutes over. That happens. Well, I'm going to sign off because I've got Sexy Liberal show tonight, and I got to go prep for that. I'm very excited about it. A couple of my sketches are pretty long form ones, but I worked on them very hard, so I'm very proud. Hopefully you will not, you guys won't miss it, and join me in the chat rooms in there if you can, in the VIP sections. I will post what room I am in on all sources as best I can. But again, make the incremental changes in yourself first. Here's what I would say. This is my closing thought on this. Please look at your own life as best you can and go, what changes do I make that are revolutionary, and what changes do I make that are incremental and make genuine that change me healthfully over time, even if it's just maintenance. Do you shower once and call it a day, or do you shower every day? Do you brush your teeth once and figure they're brushed for life? Do you exercise once and go, well, did that? No. You do it every day. And if you want to grow in any of those areas, cure your gingivitis, lose some weight and gain some muscle, make sure that your cardiovascular health is in line, fix your financial position in life. If you do all those things, you make the daily effort plus an incremental positive adjustment. And, and whenever anybody says, I'm behind you 100%, what there really is behind you 20%. Because after the rest of their life is taken care of, they've got 20% left over they can give to other things. You got 100% of that 20%. Anyways, think about that, guys. I appreciate you guys very much. And I will see some of you tonight at the Sexy Liberal show. The rest of you I will see Monday on the regular stream. And of course, we'll be doing the debates on Tuesday. Super exciting. Super exciting. It's going to be crazy. Yeah, so be well. Take care of yourself and take care of somebody else. Reach out. Yesterday, Summer got me a gift. She got me a virtual birthday party. She gathered a bunch of people from my past together, like a little digital, this is your life for a gathering Zoom call. And I fought back tears like 3 times on it. And all your guys' messages on Twitter and elsewhere, I greatly appreciated it. It was a beautiful thing. I mean, just getting to see, it was just awesome. So anyways, I adore you guys. I will see you guys later at the Sexy Liberal show or on Monday. Take care of yourself and take care of somebody else. Bye, everybody. Have fun. Go eat something good.
honored to have with us today our amazing Vice President, Mike Pence, and his wonderful wife, Karen.
So that's the kind of fight it's going to be.
Hail to the king, baby.
We've got entirely too many troublemakers here.
Stop breaking the law, asshole!
Why don't you just sit there and bleed a while before you taste some real pain?
Sorry.
Beef jerky?
Oh, no, son, thank you very much. No, it gives me the wind, something terrible.
Oh.
I was thinking of the immortal words of Socrates, who said, "Welcome to the real world."
Take off, eh?
The golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rule.
I'm just a happy camper.
Like the guy said, you're gonna eat lightning and you're gonna drop thunder.
Groovy.
Did have shade. I'm dead sexy.
Bring out your dead!
I'm telling you straight. It's my way or the highway. So anybody wants to walk, do it now.
Motang. 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 Motang.